Hello. I did some different makeup today. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I love asymmetry. It's a little rough, but that's not really the point. It's for fun. Hello. It's Friday. Yay, finally. I hope you're all hanging in there. It's another day, another stream in fascist America. Welcome to whatever this is, an attempt at providing education, advocacy, and a little common sense in this digital wasteland. My name's Aubri Devashrayee. Today is Culture Corner. We're gonna do Banned Book Club. And there are a few things that I wanted to go over with the Congo, talking about the science of trauma. Tan, a frequent viewer and mod, also sent me an article that I want to go over that talks about the neurobiology of experiencing genocide and its long-term impacts. So I'm very interested in that, and we have a number of videos to also go with it. We read chapters 18 and 19 in The Giver, and they're very momentous chapters. And then we'll get into Culture Corner with some new things, like some new music specifically. I got a book thrifting that I want to show you all that I greatly enjoy. And then we'll get into the Scarlet Pimpernel. Yeah. Okay, so I start off with a funny video. I saw this video by the I've Had It ladies talking about Benny Johnson being outed. And that's funny to me because that's an open secret. Anyone with any sort of wits about them can understand that he is hella gay. And that's great. Love that. Except don't be a bigot. Don't be advocating against people like yourself who just want to exist in the world without being torn down by people and the government. So it's good to see people get what they deserve. And I'm very intrigued about how all of this came about. So let's just get right into it. Benny Johnson melts down after his secrets get leaked in MAGA Civil War. Here we go.
I know this is really petty and immature, but I love MAGA on MAGA crime, MAGA on MAGA gossip. I'm here for it. I can't get enough of it.
I don't think it's immature.
And I want to share with you all. And
we need these wins.
And pumps today. A former MAGA influencer is going scorched earth on one Benny Johnson, and she is threatening to bring receipts. Her name is Ashley St. Clair. She is a former MAGA influencer and brand ambassador for Turning Point USA, brand ambassador, whatever. And I'm not even remotely close to being done. And she is a baby mama of Elon Musk. And you might remember we've done some reporting in the past that basically there's some corroborating evidence that Elon Musk, chronically online, shops for baby mamas on his free speech Nazi white nationalist website. Okay. So she deprogrammed from the MAGA cult and has expressed remorse and for taking anti-trans positions in the past, which I welcome, Benny Johnson has taken issues with this, essentially saying she shouldn't have custody of her child, which leads me to believe if she doesn't have custody of the child, does that mean that Elon has custody of the child? The guy who showed up in the Oval Office with a black eye, tripping balls on ketamine, dressed like, I don't know, he just walked off from an all-nighter sleepover on the subway, and his little kid was wiping boogers on the nose, looking at the president and going, "You're not the president." Do you remember all that? You remember that little "You're not the president." Okay, so here's the video of
Peter Thiel
newly
is.
deprogrammed
Netanyahu is.
former brand ambassador to Turning Point USA, Ashley St. Clair.
This is a message for Benny Johnson. Since I came forward about my experience with that predator, Madison Cawthorn, I had mentioned in my video that Benny Johnson, I had disclosed to him that I had experienced this behavior with Madison Cawthorn, and that Benny has continued to platform this awful human being. However, I'm not a consumer of Benny Johnson content because I value my IQ and I'm not one of his cerebral speed bump boomer followers. Unfortunately, I've watched his content in the last 24 hours because it's been sent to me. And before yesterday, I was unaware of the content that Benny Johnson had been putting out about me on his show, including about my family and my children, and that I should lose my child, that I am not a sane parent, that I am a narcissist, making up lies about my finances and my family situation. So, Benny, I have been sitting on the receipts of you for far too long. You and your sociopathic behavior and the way you operate your businesses and your grift. So you want to go, Benny? You want to talk about my children and make this personal? Let's go. Because I have been sitting on this for far too long. And guess what? A lot of people have been sitting on things about you for far too long. And I will remind you that if you live in a glass house, stop throwing stones for your little Facebook dollars.
Tisk. Well, this was in
Facebook
response
dollars.
to this video that Benny had made about her custody battle with Elon Musk. Let's play this clip.
Crazy, and it's wrong. Period. Just is. And so, yeah, the only thing that you can hope in this scenario is that the child goes to the sane parent that doesn't believe in this type of gender fluidity and butchery of children.
Okay, I'm just going to say, as a former divorce lawyer, child custody, I fail to understand why all these women that have these babies with Elon Musk do not ask for a court order to drug test him. I mean, it's the easiest thing on the planet. The judge has jurisdiction. Fucking drug test his ass. Let's talk about his prescriptions for ketamine. Let's talk about how much he's taking.
Yeah.
Like, this makes no sense to me that these people are going round and round with Elon. It just seems to be just a slam dunk.
People are also afraid of him.
Obviously.
And his money.
That's very, very good from America's Greatest Legal Mind.
Absolutely.
Great tip. So then Ashley St. Clair posted this on her Instagram story. And for those of you that are listening, it is a little image with a gay pride flag, a picture, a selfie of her and Benny Johnson. And she says, "We're all a little gay. We're all a little gay now." And so then,
love that.
These people. So then Benny Johnson.
I mean, she has done harm, this Ashley character, but I am glad to see that she is admitting that she was wrong, taking some people down. I'm for that. I love seeing the infighting. It's so tasty.
Johnson responds to that with a post. Pop that up. He says, This post will not get clicks. It won't make headlines. It won't be red siren emoji breaking the internet because it will not feed the drama machine. But it's still important to say,
we know he's gay.
A Christian.
He acts
as a Christian. I try to live out my faith.
It's just very clear.
It's impossible to always get it right, but it's something I strive for. Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God." the internet runs on drama, and it's gotten worse. I try to stay out of it, but the
Give me a
lies
break.
are loud, and it's important to state the truth. I
I
don't know
try to
why
stay
people
out of
engage
it.
in this trash. It's bad for the soul. But to the people out there that do it, I forgive you. Christ
Oh, how noble.
forgave me. So
What a
I
saint.
forgive you. I am sure I don't know what plan you are carrying, but Jesus does. He can carry it for you and set you free. Give your life to him. Then he quotes Matthew 11, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. You will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." I just want to point out that I think it's incredibly rich. The massive main core supporter influencers of Donald Trump quote Jesus Christ all the time.
Yeah.
And they never talk about the stuff that Jesus says about, like, the accumulation of wealth. And
Yeah,
Benny
very
Johnson
selective,
sitting there
picking
trying
and
to pitch to
choosing
us that
what
he's some huge
ever
Christian,
supports their
and
political
his
agenda.
Christianity guides him, much like Riley Gaines, to love Donald Trump unconditionally and support his
Yeah.
mission and his message for peace, is a walking, talking advertisement against Christianity. Like, you were in this bubble at one point, Pumps. I mean, the sole purpose of a lot of this is to recruit, to
Right.
bring people in, to make sure everybody's, if the rapture comes, that everybody's raptured, which is why I never got saved, because I didn't want to go with all of those people. But Pumps, what's your take on this? All of this Jesus stuff wrapped up into supporting a man, and of course there's the grab him by the pussy, the adjudicated rapist, but this is a guy who, like, there's 160 dead Iranian schoolgirls that were vaporized in a double tap strike by the United States of America. And I just think, I'm not a religious person, but if I were, and Jesus were my Lord and personal Savior, I would think that would be something that he would weep about.
Well, that's exactly what you would think, but it's been so manipulated and distorted, like, just based on my experience. You are better than other people. You get to demean people. You are entitled to special treatment. So killing school girls in Iran, you can excuse that because we have a higher purpose, because we're going to, save them or whatever. Here's the couple things that stood out to me about this Benny Johnson thing. Number one, he quotes about the peacemaker. Jesus wants to be a peacemaker while he is supporting a man that is committing war crimes every single day. Okay, that struck out to me. And then I kind of thought it was an admission where he says, I strive to be a Christian, but I don't always succeed. And what popped in my head,
Are you
was him
engaged in
so proud
weird
with his
behavior?
alligator Alcatraz hat on, saying how he could not wait for these people that were detained to try to escape so they could get eaten by alligators. And in terms
Disgusting.
of, I'm a Christian, I have found
Again,
in my
evil.
lifetime, if you tell me you're a Christian and you have to tell me how godly your marriage is and how much you believe in God,
Yeah.
then
Show
you're
us.
the single most fucked up
How
person
about you
on the
act
planet
in a
that is
Christian
using
manner,
your religion
actually.
such as, I pray about it and now it's gone. I don't have to be accountable because I prayed about it and it's gone. So everything about Benny Johnson is a
Similar
grift and bullshit.
in Mormonism.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And I just want to remind you and the viewer/listener that we cannot forget that this is the guy who was dumb enough to post this online. So he posts the advertising on the Military Times right now, and it is an advertisement for the world's largest gay cruise. And this was the day that Benny Johnson found out about Google using targeted ads based on the user's internet search history. So Google determined that Benny Johnson was Googling gay stuff at such a frequent rate, I would assume. I don't understand all of this, but at such a frequent rate that it thought, oh, well, this guy's a great candidate to go on this gay cruise. And so he basically tells on himself.
Yeah, with a little bit of insight here. having worked in media and like social media management, ads, and how they're served. One of the categories in which to target people with ads is their interests and what they look up. And so it takes this cumulative look at your activity online and then serves you ads based on that. So, yeah. He's been looking up gay shit. Just be honest, sweetie.
And I think what Ashley St. Clair is getting at here is that Benny Johnson is a member of the DL Demon Queen sect of MAGA. And the DL Demon Queen sect are all of these DL queens that ostracize and demean gay people during the day and then fetishize them so much in their private space online or at night that they get targeted for this Benny Johnson guy. He's really into all the gay stuff on Google. I think he's a great candidate for our gay cruise. And so on top of all of this, these people are abject liars and gaslighters. There's something so broken in them that they do not want to come to terms with, that they would rather that play out by breaking other people. I think at the core of this, Benny Johnson is jealous. He is jealous AF at all of the out of the closet, prideful members of the LGBTQ plus community that can live in their space and as themselves and had the courage to do that despite the Benny Johnsons and the Lindsey Grahams and the Donald Trumps and all of these people and all of these mega church pastors that want to push them down. All right, listener, have you noticed friends, family members, acquaintances are shedding pounds and looking better than ever? And you ask them, what's your secret? They're kind of coy about it. More than likely, they're probably on GLP-1s. GLP-1s are transforming the way people are treating health. The problem is a lot of people don't know how to access GLP-1s, and that's why I want to introduce our listeners to Ro. Ro offers the first FDA-approved GLP-1 pill for weight loss at the lowest cost around. The new GLP-1 pill has the same weight loss ingredient as the shot and packs comparable results to the shot. It can help patients lose 14% of their body weight in a year on average. Ro offers the lowest cost GLP-1s whether you're using insurance or paying cash. After your first online visit, if you're eligible for treatment, you can expect to start your medication in less than a week of paying cash or about 2 weeks if using insurance. So listener, what are you waiting for?
I'm not going to skip the ad. Just to make it more
eligible for the new
ethical,
GLP-1 pill on
but
Ro. That's ro.co/IHIB
going
to get started on Ro. Go to ro.co/safety for boxed warning and full safety information about GLP-1 medications based on study in non-diabetics with obesity or overweight plus a weight-related condition with diet and exercise. But I want to leave you all with, here's a video of Tommy Tuberville, and he calls the majority of the GOP embarrassing on Benny Johnson's podcast. Play the clip.
Here, Benny, is about, we got to get reelected. We got to keep the majority. Well, hell, we ain't done anything in the majority. Should we keep majority? We've gotten one bill passed, and that was President Trump pushing and pushing and pushing, and it took us 18 hours to get Republicans to vote for it. 18 hours straight on the Senate floor, and it's embarrassing that we're up here and we're raising money to continue with the same people being up here. It's just nonsense. It's really nonsense. And again,
his face.
I assume it's because they're not far right enough. They're not taking enough people's rights away. They're not taking enough food out of children's mouths that he's not happy. But, Tommy Tuberville, he goes all through me. He is a failed football coach. He was in charge of a football program compromised primarily of African-American Black players. And then he is a fucking dyed-in-the-wool racist piece of shit. I cannot stand him. He shows you what a dipshit he is every time he opens his mouth. And Benny Johnson, sitting over there with this coiffed hair and his glasses that I'm sure he looked in the mirror.
And his idiotic face.
You two are pretenders. You are just fucking pretenders.
And I'll just say this to Benny Johnson. If Ashley St. Clair or others drop a lot of evidence that, in fact, you might be DL, Tommy Tuberville will be the first person to throw you under the bus, never speak to you again, and spit on your fucking face.
Yep, exactly. And they know that.
Queens that carry the water for the patriarchy, he's going to be the first to drown. Benny Johnson is. And the people who will embrace you and help you deprogram are the very people you're fighting against right now. But Tommy Tuberville is going to
Buy into the
spit
system doesn't
in
give you
your
acceptance.
face. He has absolutely the darkest, blackest, white supremacist, old, crusty white guy. I know these type of men. They are the worst. They think they're so smart. They think they're so attractive. They think they're great lays. And it couldn't be further from the truth, because all of society has
True.
been rigged up for somebody as subpar as Tommy Tuberville to excel in life. And he sucks as a football coach, and he
Yeah.
sucks as a senator. All right, that's all we have. Like and subscribe. We'll be back later with more news.
All right. So let's get some headlines. I want to catch up on some things that have been happening. So let's hear what Amy Goodman has to say. There was the premiere of her documentary on her life. So that's why she's in Los Angeles right now. I'm assuming that she still is, because she had this same background yesterday when she said she was in Los Angeles. Anyway, let's give it a watch.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Celebrations broke out across Lebanon overnight after Israel agreed to a 10-day ceasefire following U.S. broker talks to end 7 weeks of attacks that have killed nearly 2,200 people in Lebanon, including 172 children. Israel continued airstrikes right up until the ceasefire took effect.
And they
Thursday
have since
evening,
broken the
including attacks
ceasefire.
on the city of Tyre that
Surprise,
killed
surprise.
At least 13 people. Elsewhere, Israel bombed a school in southern Lebanon and blew up the last bridge over the Litani River, further isolating southern Lebanon from the rest of the country. Israeli forces now occupy about 10% of Lebanon's territory, with an estimated 1.2 million people displaced from their homes. This is Ibrahim Sawaidi, a 30-year-old living in a tent in Beirut after he fled Israeli strikes in the suburb of Dahia.
They gave a 10-day ceasefire, but we don't accept that. 10 days, if we want to go back to our homes, 10 days and the war returns, we don't want that. Either our land is fully returned or we don't want the ceasefire. We'll continue with the war. My home in Dahia, in Beirut's southern suburbs, has been destroyed. Who will compensate me?
After headlines, we'll go to Beirut for the latest. In Israel, hundreds of people rallied in Tel Aviv Thursday to denounce escalating attacks on Palestinians by Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank. Human rights groups say it was the largest protest of its kind yet in Israel. It came after Israel's High Court lifted a weeks-long wartime ban on public gatherings. The U.S. House of Representatives rejected a war powers resolution seeking to rein in President Trump's ability to wage war on Iran. On Thursday, every House Republican voted against the resolution except for Kentucky Congressmember Thomas Massey. It failed on a vote of 213 to 214 after Democrat Jared Golden of Maine crossed the aisle.
Ew.
With the Republicans. The Senate narrowly rejected
Traitor.
the war powers
We need to
resolution
call him.
one day
We need to call
earlier.
him. Call his
On
office.
Thursday, President Trump
Hello,
repeated
Linton.
his claim that a deal to end the
Welcome,
war in Iran
welcome.
is, quote, very close.
How are you this
and that
Friday
direct
afternoon,
talks with Iran
early
could
evening,
resume in Pakistan
or
as
wherever you
soon
are?
as this weekend. Despite the claims, the Pentagon is surging thousands of additional troops to the Middle East, including an additional 6,000 sailors and aviators joining the USS George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier battle group. The ships were recently spotted steaming around the southern tip of Africa, avoiding a much shorter passage through the Red Sea, where they would be in range of missiles and drones of Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi movement. In Ukraine,
Late
at least
night
17
smoke
people
sesh
were
before
killed as
bed.
Russia launched
Fun.
its deadliest drone
Love
and
that.
missile attacks of the year.
My day's
on
been
Kyiv
all right,
and other
you know,
cities.
just
Among the dead was a 12-year-old child. Dozens more
Keeping
were wounded.
keeping on,
This
I
is Valery
guess.
Shashkov, an 84-year-old who had to have glass shards removed from his face
What is your
after Russian
preferred
strikes shattered the windows of
smoking
his
method?
home.
It hit me like a smash. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't figure out what had happened. That blood was flowing all around me, you see. I looked up and then there was another strike.
The violence came at the end of a 32-hour Orthodox Easter truce that each side accused the other of violating. On Thursday, Russian officials said a Ukrainian
Dry
drone
herb
attack on the
vape.
Black Sea
Ooh,
port of Tuapse
sounds
killed
nice.
2 people, including a teenage girl. The strikes also triggered a massive fire at one of Russia's largest oil refineries. In New Jersey, progressive Democrat Ana Lilia Mejia has won a special election to fill the House seat left vacant by New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill. Mejia's victory further narrows Republicans' razor-thin majority. Once she's sworn in, House Speaker Mike Johnson will only be able to afford a defection by a single Republican in order to pass legislation on a party-line vote. Mejia is the daughter of a Colombian garment worker and a Dominican laborer and a former union organizer who served as a national political director for Bernie Sanders in 2020. On the campaign trail, she called for the abolition of ICE and was the only candidate to say she believed Israel committed genocide in Gaza.
Yes.
80% of Gaza is in rubble. Can we agree that that is wrong?
That is really fierce. I'm glad that she won that. I have another feel-good news vid. Turning Point were ran off of campus. Ah, love that. Yes. Nick Tenconi and Posey Parker were at a Turning Point USA stall today.
Off our campus.
I didn't know that he did that recently. Not surprising. Love that. This is what it takes. You have to completely humiliate fascists in the public square because they lie and cheat and will do whatever it takes in order to stay in power, that it has to be repudiated by the masses in a very public way. Bravo. Thank you for sharing. Oh, I love seeing that. The fascists are losing, but we do see that, unfortunately, with the fall of these fascist people and entities, powers, forces, that they become more violent as they are losing power, which is what we're seeing currently. Nick Tenconi is a real freak. He took a group of fascist thugs over to Calais in France to terrorize refugee camps on the shoreline. Jesus Christ. Disgusting. There really is no shame, which is why it has to be done, this shaming, in a very public way. Love that. Not what he did, but love them being run off a campus. Good for all of the people there.
Can we agree that cutting the electricity to water desalination plants is not only wrong, but it goes against the Geneva Convention and it is a war crime?
The House of Representatives has approved a short-term extension of FISA, that's the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, over the objections of privacy advocates who warn it allows the government to conduct warrantless domestic surveillance on a massive scale. Without congressional action, the program was due to expire in 3 days. The White House and House Speaker Mike Johnson were seeking an 18-month extension, but those plans were thwarted when a bloc of conservatives revolted against the bill. It also faces opposition from some Democrats, including California Congressmember Ro Khanna, who said in a social media post Republicans called lawmakers back at midnight for a, quote, secret vote to reauthorize FISA while America sleeps.
This would give Donald Trump the power to surveil or collect data on Americans through a back door. There really is not a philosophical debate here. A yes vote is a vote to give Donald Trump more power over American citizens. A no vote is a vote to stand up to Donald Trump. Every Democrat should be a no on the reauthorization of FISA.
Yeah, this is about surveillance. And we see how establishment Democrats are the other side of this fascist coin that we have gotten here because of their complicity with all of this bullshit, that they are interested in having a lot more surveillance and keeping up this state of people not having any sort of privacy and making sure that people are being watched so that they can have all of these different actions based off of political motives. And it's just unacceptable, but it's not surprising. So just continuing to do what they do, it's tiring, but we knew this was going to happen.
The House of Representatives has passed a resolution to extend temporary protected status, that's TPS, for 330,000 Haitian immigrants in the United States after the Trump administration canceled the program. 10 Republicans joined House Democrats in Thursday's 224 to
That's
204 vote. The bill was
and
sponsored
honestly kind
by
of surprising,
Massachusetts
but
Democrat
that's
Ayanna
great.
Pressley. Ahead of Thursday's vote, she told the story of Rebecca, a Haitian immigrant who moved to Massachusetts after the devastating earthquake in 2010 resulted in the deaths of an estimated 220,000 people in what was already the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere.
She witnessed the rise in gangs and saw her beautiful country overtaken by political violence and instability. After surviving multiple kidnapping attempts, out of desperation, Rebecca made the same decision that any of us would make in her position. She immigrated to the United States. She quickly enrolled in school to learn English. She obtained a job to support herself and her family. Now in 2026, thanks to her legal status under TPS, Rebecca is a certified nursing assistant.
A Senate version of the bill extending TPS for Haitians faces an uphill battle in the Senate, and the White House has promised to veto any such legislation. President Trump's repeatedly used racist rhetoric to lash out against Haitians.
Yes.
During the 2024 campaign,
Exactly.
he amplified the unfounded lie that Haitians were eating pets, cats.
Which is a trope, a racist trope that has been used for centuries. And it's old-fashioned racism. But this is also how he got into power, is by playing on people's worst inclinations and prejudices and saying that, oh, we're going to exploit this sentiment of xenophobia and anti-blackness that exists in the world, but particularly in the nation, and make it so that people are fighting each other rather than paying attention to the bullshit that we're doing.
Dogs in Springfield, Ohio. The acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, has announced his resignation from the agency just 1 year after his appointment to oversee Trump's rapid expansion of nationwide ICE raids, immigration, detention, and deportations. Todd Lyons, who was never confirmed by the Senate, says he's stepping down in May. During his tenure, he repeatedly defended ICE's tactics as the agency faced mounting scrutiny over its agents' violent crackdown on protesters and dehumanizing treatment of immigrants.
Yeah,
in Minnesota,
concentration camps.
Hennepin County prosecutors have charged an ICE agent with felony assault for allegedly pointing his gun at the heads of two.
I used to live in Hennepin County. They really have been doing such incredible resistance to all of the fascist tactics there. It's inspiring. And that's not to say that there aren't other places in the nation that are doing this, because like in LA and Chicago, there have been many similar methods that have been utilized by communities in order to protect each other. This rapid response network that people have developed, or networks, I should say. But I think Minnesota tends to get more attention with this because they had that extra amount of ICE agents that were sent in.
People who were in a car beside him. Earlier this year, the agent, Gregory Donald Morgan Jr., reportedly had tried to pass their
They look like IDF. They look like the IDF. ICE. Is there a difference? Not really.
Vehicle while illegally driving his unmarked SUV on a Minneapolis highway. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty announced the charges on Thursday.
Mr. Morgan's conduct was extremely dangerous. Driving while pointing a weapon out of your moving vehicle at the victims who were in another moving vehicle could have led to yet another disastrous incident in a community that has already suffered too many.
This is the first criminal case against an ICE agent involved in Trump's so-called Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota. During the crackdown earlier this year, federal agents deployed
Let the
to
accountability
Twin Cities,
begin.
shot and killed 2 U.S. citizens, Renee Good and Alex Preti. In related news, Minneapolis resident Alia Rahman has filed a personal injury claim against DHS after ICE agents in Minneapolis smashed her car window, dragged her out, and detained her while she was heading to a doctor's appointment in January. Alia Rahman will join us from Minneapolis later in the broadcast. Republican Texas Governor Greg
I hope
Abbott
she wins that
has
case.
threatened to cut about $200 million in public safety funding to Houston, Dallas, and Austin if their local law enforcement
Greg
agencies
Abbott.
refuse to collaborate with ICE.
When will we ever get rid of these fucking boomers in power? When are they gonna die? He has been in power for so long. And they are just desperate, trying to cling on to this with an attempt to be relevant and keep making money and exploiting people. It's like, you have grandchildren. Don't you care about the policies that are affecting them? But clearly they don't.
And the arrest and detention of immigrants over minor infractions such as traffic stops. This week, Abbott's office reportedly notified Houston officials the state would be withdrawing some $110 million in public safety grants after the city adopted an ordinance that limits police's cooperation with ICE. The FBI's arrested a man who was shot by ICE agents in Patterson, California last week and charged him with assaulting a federal officer.
Oh my
Carlos
God. Yeah. The FBI arresting the person who was attacked.
Ivan Mendoza Hernandez was taken into custody after being discharged from the hospital Monday, where he underwent several surgeries from multiple gunshot wounds, including to the jaw.
They're trying to cover up their crimes.
To drive away when federal officers surrounded his car during a traffic stop while he was on his way to work. He later said he feared the officers were going to shoot him. Meanwhile, in Texas, advocates are demanding the release of a longtime court interpreter and the only licensed Punjabi, Hindi, and Urdu interpreter in the state who was detained by ICE last month. Meenu Batra has lived in the United States for over 35 years. She fled India following pogroms against Sikhs in Punjab and arrived in the United States in 1991. Her attorneys fear Batra could be deported to a country she has no ties to under Trump's so-called third country agreements. Batra has spoken out against the inhumane conditions of her detention at the El Valle ICE jail in Raymondville, Texas. In Virginia, police...
That is a very blatant way to make it so people do not have translation resources available in detention. That is intentional. It is an attempt to further undermine people's right to due process, which they are already experiencing an enormous amount of that by not being allowed to have phone calls to family or lawyers, representation, that people are just being deported without any sort of court case or hearing that is being heard. That feels like an extra targeted detention. Yes. It even further undermines the justice minorities face in the state. Exactly. Which they are required by law to have translators available for people. And if people think, because like there are some Indian MAGA people, and they're like how we have in the administration, they are coming after even more Indian people. They are ramping up their efforts. So all of these people who are like, oh, it's just like immigrants, these illegal immigrants. It's like, no, it was never about that. It's never been about that. It's just about ethnic cleansing. That's what it is. And violating people's human rights because they're wanting to create a fascist, white Christian nationalist ethno-state. They look at Israel as an aspirational project. They are trying to create apartheid. And it's disgusting. But we are seeing how there is enormous fallout, that most of the American public are very against what is happening and all of this violence and just human rights violations for immigrants and just for brown and black people, people of color, but they don't care. They don't care about public sentiment. They are just going to try to use whatever options of power that they have available to keep up this regime until it comes crashing down around them.
Former Lieutenant
Which is why we need
Justin Fairfax
a national strike.
Fatally shot his estranged wife, Serena Fairfax,
I heard about this.
taking his own life. The couple's teenage children were home at the time of the murder-suicide, which took place 2 weeks before Fairfax faced a court-ordered deadline to move out of their home. In 2019, 2 women publicly accused Fairfax of sexual assault.
Jesus.
And Hampshire College, a private liberal...
This also happens with fascist movements, that overall rates in domestic violence, rates in murders that happen because of interpartner violence, sexual assault and abuse that happens between partners as well, that this is always rising because when we have these violent movements take hold of the nation, it encourages even more violence in all aspects of society. This is consistent with all fascist movements. So is it surprising that we are seeing all of this happen? No, but my partner was showing me an article this morning about how there is this site that I guess CNN was reporting on that is like essentially like teaching men how to like drug and rape their partners, and how there are millions of people that have gone to this site. It's like, yeah, what do you expect when we are in this hellscape, when fascists are at the helm encouraging this, when all of these techno-oligarchs are Nazis and extremely sexist and racist, and how they are intent on making it so that women and their partners can't escape them, that they want to take away the right to vote for women, for their partners and wives, and that this is all about control. That's how you know that it is about power. In 2024, we had massive far-right riots. That's true. 4 in 10 of those arrested at the riots had prior convictions for domestic abuse. Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's like, and so many people that we have seen like joining ICE, they're part of these white supremacist groups like the KKK and the Proud Boys, and that they were, a lot of them, doing the insurrection on January 6th when Trump refused to accept the results of the election. So it's like, not only in the system that we are in is violence allowed, it's encouraged. So like they are acting in ways that they are intending them to, which is why it's not just about like getting rid of certain people in positions of power. It's about addressing the systemic problem of how these people even got into power in the first place and holding them accountable so that it can't happen again. But accountability is very hard to come by these days in the United States. I mean, in many, I guess, ever in the United States, but especially now. But this is why we need a national strike, because really the only thing they care about is capital and enriching themselves, power that they are able to gain from their capital. And we need to have a concerted strike until we have this administration step down, in my opinion. It's very difficult trying to gain momentum with Americans, especially when material conditions are so deteriorated that people are forced to be working all the time, multiple jobs in order to survive. And this makes it less likely for people to want to strike. And they've done away with all of these, they have specifically enacted laws to encourage union busting. So it makes it so workers are very disempowered all around. Hello, Tan. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing?
Arts College in Amherst, Massachusetts, has announced it will close by the end of 2026 following years of financial struggles.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Consulting group has warned over 400.
It is not like the cleanest look, but
nonprofit four-year colleges and
I'm
universities
extra.
are at risk
I
of
love
closing
asymmetry.
or having to merge within the next 10 years. This comes amidst growing
Giving
attacks
Cleopatra
on
and
education by the Trump
Rockstar.
administration
Ooh,
and decades
I
of
love that there
skyrocketing
is like
tuition costs,
goth
declining student
fashion and
enrollment,
energy
and a
coming
student
back,
debt crisis.
especially with Gen
those are
Z
some
and
of the
even Gen Alpha. Like that shows you how hard young people have it, is that they're like, oh yeah, it makes sense that we are just feeling this way. We have to express ourselves and embrace the tragedy of where we're at.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. Thanks for watching.
But it's nice to have like some punk energy out there that's necessary in this moment. And like actual punk energy, not like CIA co-opted punk energy, like organic anti-establishment, which is great. Okay, so I wanted to talk more about the Congo and what is happening there. There's this really great video that I found that I want to watch. And then Tan, you so graciously provided this article on the neurobiology of hatred that I want to discuss. It's amazing. Thank you for sending that. And then we'll get into more about the long-term impacts of conflict, but specifically genocide, some of the neurobiology of people who are engaged in hate groups, and then we'll get into Banned Book Club. Fashion has always dismantled illusions as a formless expression. Exactly. Especially when we are doing it in a way that isn't dictated by trends or what like the fashion industry, it's called an industry for a reason because it's part of capital, that they are the ones telling us what is beautiful or not and what is acceptable or how we can present ourselves. Always sought to. Yeah, exactly. Hello, Stuart Little is my son. Welcome. Good to see you. Okay. Let's get into this video. The exploitation of Congo and why the world will never let it be free. I really hope that is not the case. I really hope that there will be a free Congo, free Sudan, free Palestine, free every type of society and group of people that are being oppressed right now. And I think that is possible, but I am interested in the details of what she's going to say. Hooray, science papers incoming. Yes! I love seeing the melding of science and social issues. It's like they're so interconnected. Amazing.
The world tells you Congo is cursed, Congo is chaotic, but look closer. Congo is not cursed. Congo is chained by kings who mutilated children for rubber so Europe could ride bicycles and
King
drive cars.
Leopold
Chained
of Belgium.
by superpowers who murdered Patrice Lumumba because he dared to say Congo's wealth should serve its own people. Chained by dictators who bled the nation dry while dining in Paris and Washington. Chained by neighbors who sent armies across...
Oh, this is a quick update. Fuck Leopold. Exactly. The name alone should give a hint as to what evil he's up to. I don't think there's... I mean, this is a painting with a broad brush, but I don't care. I think most people who have been named Leopold in history have probably been assholes. So I finished this bracelet. These are the colors of the Venezuelan flag. Wait, no. No, this is the Congo. Yeah, this is the Congo. I'll pull up an example of the flag. This is their newest version.
Its borders and by corporations that
still working out how to sell these to donate.
Dug up by Congolese children. Congo's story is not chaos, it is not misfortune, it is the most organized exploitation the modern world has ever seen, and it continues link by link, silence by silence. It is the silence of Europe which built museums and monuments with
this
Congo's
one.
fallen wealth, yet still cannot
It used to be
have
this
the word
one.
genocide in its history books. It is the silence of America, which
Those Leopolds brushed with the likes of
Caravaggio.
Caravaggio.
All while buying the
That is
millions
amazing.
that helped the slaughter
I
alive.
love this
It is the
Caravaggio
silence of
reference.
Africa itself, where too many leaders have traded Congo's
Amazing.
suffering for alliances,
But yes,
contracts,
exactly.
or quiet borders. And it is the silence of the world, a silence so loud it drowns out the screams of the dead and the pleas of the living. Because Congo has never lacked resources, never lacked the courage, never lacked vision. What it has been denied again and again is justice. Justice for Leopold's crimes, justice for Lumumba's murder, justice for Mobutu's theft, justice for the millions buried in unmarked graves while the world debated, delayed, and forgot. So the question is not whether Congo is cursed. The question is how long the world will keep pretending not to hear the rattle of chains it
Oh, I guess
helped
these
forge.
colors are
And
fairly
the
similar
deeper
to the
question is
Venezuelan
this:
flag.
when the world
They're just like
finally
slightly
admits
different
it
shades
hears them,
of the
will it
same
have
colors.
the courage to break them free? Congo's chains began with King Leopold of
I've
Belgium
been making
in
so many, I'm like
1885
blurring them
at
all in
a
my head.
conference in Berlin where no Africa was invited. European powers sat around a table and carved Africa like a cake. Leopold claimed Congo for himself, not for Belgium, but himself, and also for his own pocket. He called it Congo, the Free State, but the only freedom was his freedom to plunder that country. Leopold's men forced entire villages to harvest rubber, a material the world suddenly needed for car tires, telegraphs, and industry. Soldiers marched into villages with guns. If quotas were not met, they burnt homes, took hostages, or cut off hands as proof of punishment. This was not just violence. It was a system of terror designed to squeeze wealth from human bodies. Historians estimate that between 10 to 15 million Congolese people died under Leopold's rule, from killings, starvation, exhaustion, and disease that followed the forced labor. It was one of the greatest genocides of the 19th and 20th century. But unlike the Holocaust or Rwanda genocide, it is rarely spoken of in classrooms or newsrooms. The story of Congo's suffering was buried under silence. In Europe, children are taught to remember Hitler. In Rwanda, the world repeats, never again.
Obviously.
But Congo's 10 million people who died are treated as a footnote, as if their lives mattered less. Museums in Brussels.
And that strategy of silencing the press and the media, businesses that are acting in the interest of the government or these genocidal forces, suppressing information, getting out to the public, making it so that people are not educated about real history. This is a classic tactic of colonizers, people who are engaged in ethnic cleansing, especially, and how they maintain their power is by having this kind of mind control and keeping people ignorant of things that they don't know about so that they can't rebel. U.S. education systems are abysmal. Yeah, there's a reason why Americans have like not a great grasp on world events or foreign policy, because if we did, we would understand that the U.S. is a terrorist for years and years to the entire globe. But instead, people are like, yeah, America, we're powerful and we can do whatever we want. That's like, no, you can't. You can barely afford things as it is, but you have this like delusion of grandeur that is encouraged by American propaganda.
Still display ivory tusks and Congolese artifacts, but few mention the rivers.
And it's not an accident education is the worst in these conservative strongholds.
This chapter is often skipped, as though Leopold's crimes were too distant to carry the weight. This silence is not an accident. It protects the legacy of empires and colonialism. It allows Belgium to still celebrate its monuments without shame. It allows the West to pretend Congo's chaos began on its own, instead of being engineered by colonial greed. The forgetting itself is a shame.
Yeah, it's to cover crimes.
When the past is hidden, the present can be misrepresented.
Which is so wild, because like this colonizing fascist desire to cover crimes reveals this mindset that at some level they acknowledge that something, that what they are doing is bad, or that it won't look good for them, even if it is just about appearances. It's not about, them having any sort of like sense of morality, but that they still have this idea of like, oh, we don't want this to get out. Okay, how about you sit with that? Why? Why don't you want it to get out? Because you understand that the world will reject this and view it as atrocious, because it is.
And the same cycle of exploitation can continue unchecked. One haunting image survives from this time: a Congolese father named Nisala sitting on the porch of a missionary house, staring at the severed hand and foot of his 5-year-old daughter.
Missionaries,
She had been
the precursor
killed because his
to
village failed
militant
to meet
colonization.
its rubber quota. And this
Religious
was not
colonization.
an isolated case. It was a policy. Soldiers were ordered to collect hands as proof that bullets were not wasted. Can you imagine that? For millions of Congolese families, daily life meant the constant fear of mutilation, death, and starvation, all to feed Europe's hunger for rubber. And yet, while Congo bled, Europe grew rich. The rubber from Congolese forests lined the wheels of bicycles in Paris, the tires of cars in London, and the conveyor belts of American factories. The wealth of an...
This is what colonizers do. They ransack and extract all of these resources, oppress the masses, these places that are very rich with all of these natural resources, and completely impoverish, oppress, and ethnically cleanse these areas. And then once they have made it so there are dictators in place, a lot of the time is what they do, they then point to these societies and be like, oh, see how like they aren't, what do they call it in the Western world? See how it's underdeveloped, these developing societies? It's like, no, there was a society that was here before this shit, and you all came and fucked it up intentionally, and now you're using it as an excuse to say like, oh, see, we have to go in and like save them, we have to stay there because they can't do this. It's like the same thing happened with India, same thing that has happened to all places that have been colonized.
Entire continent was poured into Belgium, building monuments, palaces, and museums. Well, the people who paid the price were buried without names. You know, that silence, the refusal to name Leopold's genocide, made it easy for Belgium to pretend it had been a civilizing force. It allowed them to walk away from the empire without admitting the crimes that built it. And so, when independence came, it was wrapped in ceremony, but not in truth. When the age of colonialism began to crumble in the mid-20th century, Belgium could no longer hide behind Leopold's shadow. Pressure was rising from Congolese workers, the students, and ordinary citizens who demanded an end to colonial rule. By 1960, Belgium finally let go, but not without making sure the chains remained. You know, this is why we say, are we really given independence? Belgium actually rushed the handover. A country the size of Western Europe was left with almost no trained leaders, barely any schools, and only a handful of university graduates. It was independence without preparation. Freedom on paper, yes, dependence in reality. Now, into this fragile moment stepped Patrice Lumumba, Congo's first elected prime minister. On June 30th, yeah, I love Lumumba, guys. So on June 30th, 1960,
because I keep interrupting so much, just to make sure we have enough time, I'm going to bump up the speed just a bit.
Independence ceremony in Kinshasa was meant to be smooth. The Belgian king praises civilization, Congo smiles, hands are shaken, the cameras roll. King Baudouin spoke first, even praising Leopard II. President Kazavumbu followed with careful, polite words. Then Lumumba stood up and did what no one expected. He spoke directly to his people, not to the throne. His words were simple and sharp. He listed what Congolese had lived through: forced labor for nothing, land stolen by fake laws, insults and beatings, morning, noon, and night, because these people were Africans. He said independence was won by the struggle, not a gift. He promised that from that day, no
Audible
Congolese
is
would
always
be treated
on
as a servant in his own
1.5.
country.
Yeah.
The wealth of Congo
Yeah,
would
we
serve
don't have
Congolese
time.
families. The law
We have
would
work to
protect
do.
the weak, not only the powerful.
Things
He did
to
not
get
slam
through.
the door on Belgium. He asked for cooperation, but only on equal terms and with respect. Now, you can imagine he's busy standing there and he's saying all these things. Huh? And in that hall, some Belgians are gasping. Many Congolese, though, are cheering. In a few minutes, Lumumba broke the fairy tale of civilizing mission and told the truth. That speech changed everything. Western officials watched, and they decided, this guy is dangerous. But not because Lumumba lied, but because he said out loud what the empire had tried to hide. For the first time, in front of cameras, kings, and dignitaries, the mask was ripped away. The world expected a polite ceremony, handshakes and smiles, but instead, Patrice Lumumba reminded everyone that independence was not a gift wrapped in ribbons. It was won through chains, lashes, prisons, and blood. In that hall, the Belgian king sat stiff, his face very tight, Well, European guests, shifted in their seats. You can imagine how uncomfortable they were. Some foreign diplomats even whispered that Lumumba had embarrassed them, that he was ungrateful, But in the crowd
embarrassing
outside,
the
ordinary Congolese were cheering for this
colonizers.
man. They shouted, and even some cried, because they had never had their pain spoken so openly. Their humiliation
precursor to
was turned
fascism.
into defiance. For them, Lumumba's words were not dangerous. They were healing. They gave dignity back to our people, told for generations that they were less than human. Yet, that dignity was exactly what frightened the West. Because if Congolese could reclaim their past, they might also claim their future. And their future involves the minerals. We are talking about copper, cobalt, uranium. And in the Cold War, where every resource was a weapon, Congo was too rich to be allowed real freedom. From that moment, plans to isolate Lumumba were not just whispers, they became policy. The ceremony of independence had barely ended, and already another chain was being fastened. I mean, deal with this guy. Deal with this guy. The freedom began almost immediately. The Congolese army, still led by Belgian officers, mutinied within days. Soldiers who had long been treated as servants refused to salute white commanders any longer. Belgium responded by flying in paratroopers, claiming they were there to protect their citizens, but really, they were there to keep their grip on
Classic.
the mines. Then came
We're here to
Katanga,
protect.
the richest
Oh,
province,
the
home to
system,
copper
you
and
mean?
uranium. With Belgian money and mercenaries, Katanga declared it was breaking away from Congo. Can you imagine? Nairobi, for example, here in Nairobi, or Joburg or Cape Town, some of the richest places in a country decides, you know what, we are breaking away from this country. We do not want to be part of this country any longer. I mean, in less than a month, the young Congo that Patrice Lumumba dreamed of leading was being carved apart, and the world was watching. The breakaway of Katanga was no accident. It was engineered. Katanga was Congo's treasure chest, home to copper, cobalt, tin, uranium, you name it. The Shinkolobwe uranium mine there had already supplied the United States with the material that built the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. So you can imagine how big this place is. And whoever controlled Katanga controlled not just Congo's future, but part of the world's future. At the center of this plot was Moise Shombe, a local politician with Belgian backing. He declared Katanga's secession only 2 weeks after independence. And Belgium quickly moved soldiers and advisors. What is this Western countries and coming in with their advisors? So Belgium starts moving in soldiers and advisors into that province. Well,
advise on what?
Like Union Mine do hold,
Oppression?
poured money and resources into keeping Katanga separate. I mean, the plan was very clear. If Congo could not be held as a colony, then at least its richest province would remain in Western hands. Guys, it's independence. People are supposed to be celebrating independence, so which means even the things that are inside this land are ours. And then, less than even a month into this whole freedom and independence, you are telling us you are taking this whole city and you are bringing in your soldiers and advisors to this city. You know, for ordinary Congolese, it was a bitter betrayal. Independence had barely been celebrated and the country was already being cut in half. Katanga's mines kept producing, but the wealth no longer flowed to new Congolese government in Leopoldville. Instead, it went straight to Brussels, London, and New York. On paper, Congo was free. In reality, the chain of exploitation had simply been redrawn with new actors, politicians and companies working hand in hand to keep Congo dependent. Now, for Patrice Lumumba, Katanga's secession was a dead sentence in slow motion. Without Katanga's resources, his government was crippled. His speeches now about dignity, sovereignty, suddenly looked powerless against Belgian paratroopers. I mean, the paratroopers, foreign mercenaries, and mining boardrooms in Europe, you are competing against that? The very heart of Congo had been stolen right out of his hands. Now, as Katanga declared itself independent, Lumumba thought he had one last hope. He turned to the United Nations, and to him, the UN
colonizing
was
just
supposed to
has
represent the world's moral compass,
different
a place
face,
where all nations were equal.
different
if Congo was truly
branding.
free, if Congo had been granted its own independence, I mean, surely the UN would defend its sovereignty. So he invited them in. They came the way they come, blue helmets, landing in Congo, and for a moment, it looked like salvation. I mean, ordinary Congolese people lined the streets cheering for these people. They believed the world had finally come to stand with them. But very quickly, the cracks showed. Lumumba begged the UN to help bring Katanga under Congo's control. But the troops would not move. They said they had to remain neutral. Neutral? UN, you have to remain neutral? Neutral between an elected government and a secession bankrolled by Belgium? Neutral between a young African nation fighting for survival and the same empire that had mutilated people for rubber? Neutral, while Belgian officers commanded Katanga's army and Belgian companies shipped copper and uranium out of the province as if nothing had changed? What neutrality? What are we talking about? Because this cuts deeper than any bullet. To Lumumba, it meant the UN had chosen a side, the side of the colonialists. Neutrality became another chain. It only allowed Belgium to hold on to Congo's wealth without openly sending an army. Well, the UN provided cover by calling it peacekeeping, peacemaking, peacekeeping, you know. For the Congolese watching, this was a bitter lesson. The very institution meant to protect their independence was helping strangle it. You know, every time I think about this really makes me sad. How can you be neutral in front of a government that kills millions and millions of Congolese people? And guys, when we talk about the Congo genocide, we are not talking about one person. Not that the life of one person does not matter. But we are talking about the biggest genocide committed in the world was in Congo by Belgium. And yet you want to come and say neutral. You want to be neutral. That is why sometimes I wonder, what does the UN do in Africa, guys?
There's no such
you want
thing
to convince ordinary
in the
people
face of
that you are there on neutral basis.
such violence.
Well, they keep existing with the people that murdered their loved ones. What are you saying? So you can imagine Patrice Lumumba there, disappointed. He called on the UN, and the UN came and they watched this happen. You know, now with Belgium blocking him, with
because
Europe and America,
these entities like the UN also have their own
Lumumba was cornered. Every door
nefarious
was closed,
agendas for continuing the colonial
mosque.
extraction.
Now for Lumumba, it was survival. He did not pledge Congo to the Soviet Union, no. He did not ask to join their bloc, no. He asked for planes to move soldiers, food for the hungry, and trucks to restore order. But in a world divided by the Cold War, a friendship between Moscow and Congo symbolized a lot. The sight of Soviet planes landing in Congo was enough. In Western capitals, alarms were ringing. Congo was not just any country. It sat on uranium, cobalt, copper, and coltan. Sometimes I think actually Congo is Wakanda. You know, it was sitting on minerals the West considered essential for its industries, its militaries, even its nuclear arsenal. To them, Soviet help meant Soviet influence, and Soviet influence meant losing control of Congo's treasure chest. Overnight, Lumumba was no longer an African nationalist. He was painted as Africa's Fidel Castro.
The United States deplores the unilateral action of the Soviet Union in supplying aircraft and other equipment for military purposes to the Congo.
Places in the world with the most natural resources are
the CIA began drawing
the places that colonizers impoverish people
He
the
had to be
most.
neutralized. It's like a movie, neutralize this man, you know? Western newspapers echoed those same lines, calling him unstable, reckless, or radical. Have we not seen this script before? Where an African leader does not agree with the West and they start labeling him and calling him names and calling him unstable? And then there, the UN, still present in Congo, insisted on neutrality, while turning a blind eye to the plot unfolding before their eyes. From the moment those Soviet planes touched Congolese soil, Lumumba's death was no longer a question of, if. It was only a matter of when. And the pressure mounted quickly. By September 1960, Congo was barely 3 months into independence when President Joseph Kabila, pushed and backed up by Belgium and quietly advised by the CIA, announced on national radio that Lumumba was dismissed. Now, to many Congolese people listening that night, it was like hearing thunder on a clear day. How could the man who led them to independence,
fucking things up,
Patrice Lumumba, guys, the man who spoke their truth on the world stage, be cast aside so suddenly? How? But Lumumba said, you know what? He rejected the dismissal, declaring that only parliament could remove him. And for weeks, the country had two rival governments, each claiming legitimacy, while chaos grew in the streets, And in that confusion, another figure was waiting, Joseph Desire Mobutu, the young army chief, who had friends in Western embassies and envelopes of Western money in his hands. And then Mobutu announced that, he would neutralize. I mean, you have Kasa this side, you have Patrice Lumumba this side. Of course, there's chaos in the country. Then enters Mobutu. And he says, no, I'm going to neutralize all politicians, And then he said, you know what? I'm going to suspend both Lumumba and Kasa. And because this guy has soldiers who are loyal to him, these soldiers occupied ministries and radio stations. Under the banner of restoring order, he clipped Lumumba's wings and handed control back to foreign interests, all while pretending to act for Congo's good. But Lumumba did not give up. He still had supporters, especially in the East. In November 1960, he tried to travel to Stanville to rally them, hoping to rebuild his base. But on the road, Mobutu's men caught him. He was beaten, bound, and shoved into a truck. In Leopoldville, why were they even calling this place Leopoldville? What? Okay, anyways. What the?
Yeah, exactly.
No, in Leopoldville,
Fuck
he was paraded
Leopoldville.
before crowds like a captured animal.
What a stupid
The same
name,
streets
too.
that had once cheered this man now
Leopoldville.
walked in
You
horror.
couldn't come up with
Some people
a
cried
more
openly.
clever
Others
name.
stayed silent,
But again,
knowing
it's
that
all
even
about
sympathy could be punished.
staking
The sight
claim
of the
on
Prime
things,
Minister
on
of a
places
free
and
country,
people.
the man who spoke of dignity and freedom, being dragged through mud, broke something deep in the national spirit. His enemies were not done. Weeks later, Lumumba was flown to Katanga, the breakaway province, you see, still fattened by Belgian money. And there, his fate was sealed. On January 17, 1961, Lumumba and two of his closest allies, Maurice Mpolo and Joseph Okito, were lined up before a firing squad. Belgian officers and Katangan officers, watched as the shots rang out. And then after that, and they had to take him to Katanga, guys. They had to do this man like that, And then after that, their bodies were dumped in shallow graves and then dug up the next day, torn apart and dissolved in acid. Shey! The things our ancestors went through, guys. Belgian police officers later admitted they kept Lumumba's teeth and bones as trophies. Like, hunters showing off a kill. Nonsense. What is that? This man was such a threat to you guys that you had to bury him and then remove him from that grave, tow his body aside, put it on acid, take his teeth, and then go and keep it in Belgium as a trophy. What level of madness is that?
Disgusting.
I mean,
yeah, so dehumanizing.
For years, the world was fed lies. Newspapers printed stories that Lumumba had been killed by villagers or that he had escaped and been ambushed. Belgium denied. The CIA deflected. The UN kept silent, what they do best. But the truth leaked out, piece by piece, from confessions, declassified documents.
I need to step out for just a sec, but I'll be right back.
It became clear Belgium had organized it, the CIA had plotted it, and the UN had stood aside, and Mobutu had played the willing executor. Patrice Lumumba was only 35. His life was cut short, his body erased, and his memory smeared. But the message of his killing echoed far beyond Congo. African independence would be tolerated only if it served foreign interests. Leaders who dreamed too boldly, who spoke too honestly, would be silenced. Congo did not break its chains. Instead, they were pulled tighter than ever. And into that tightening grip stepped the man the West trusted, Mobutu, their chosen strongman. Mobutu rose, not because the people freely chose him, but because the world outside Congo decided he was safer than another Lumumba. Mobutu understood that power was not only about soldiers and money, it was also about symbols. To bury Lumumba's ghost and to stamp his own mark on the nation, he launched what he called the Authenticity Campaign. Congo, he declared, would shed its colonial skin and be reborn as Zaire. Cities were renamed. Leopoldville became Kinshasa. Stanleyville became Kisangani. Elizabethville, they even had Elizabethville, became Lubumbashi. Even the Congo River was rebranded the Zaire River. He ordered citizens to abandon European names and adopt, authentic African ones. He dropped Joseph Desire and became Mobutu Sese Seko Kuku Ngebendu Wazabanga, a name meant to project timeless authority. Civil servants, shopkeepers, even school children were told to follow suit. Western suits and ties were banned. Instead, men were required to wear the abacus, a short-sleeved jacket that Mobutu claimed was proudly African, but was in truth just another uniform of obedience. Mobutu himself became the living symbol of this new order. He walked around in leopard skin, hats, and thick sunglasses, parading himself as the father of the nation. He filled stadiums with choreographed crowds chanting his name, Mobutu, Mobutu. State media replayed his speeches until his voice became unavoidable. Schools hung his portrait above blackboards so that even children recited their lessons under his gaze. But beneath the spectacle, ordinary people felt the hollowness. Renaming the country did not rebuild its roads. Forcing new names did not feed the hungry. Banning neckties did not pay teachers or doctors. Authenticity was only a mask, one that covered corruption, repression, and the steady outflow of Congo's wealth into foreign hands. And of course, Mobutu's personal bank accounts became full. To the outside world, Mobutu looked like the image of post-colonial pride. African dress, African names, African symbols. But to his own people, he was a paradox, a man preaching authenticity while stealing their future, a ruler who claimed to restore dignity while making them bow lower than before. Mobutu's show of authenticity dazzled the world, yes, but it was his own corruption that defined his role. This guy went ahead to build one of the most kleptocratic regimes in modern history. A government meant not to serve the people, but to serve his own pocket. It is estimated that Mobutu stole between $4 to $5 billion during his 32 years in power. Dollars, guys, dollars. $4 to $5 billion. The money vanished into Swiss bank accounts and luxury estates, while ordinary Congolese people were left with empty hospitals and broken roads. Every deal in Zaire had a price. Ministers paid bribes to keep their seats. Soldiers stole from civilians because their salaries never came. Civil servants sold papers and permits because the state coffers were dry. Corruption was not just tolerated, it was actually the system. And guys, going back to Mobutu and this whole authenticity thing, guys, Africans, let's pay key attention to distractions. Isn't this a reminder that when the country is going through something, you will have a president saying how he's going to build a church worth 120 million, right? These distractions that these presidents do, it's just a way of making sure that you guys are not paying attention. Because at one point in Congo, people were looking up to this Mobutu guy as the African leader, you know. But can you imagine this distraction, you know? People were not even aware that minerals kept leaving Congo. For this guy to have stolen, even him himself, $4 to $5 billion US, have his money in some Swiss account somewhere, it means someone is helping this guy. And someone is definitely scripting this for us. Distract them, tell them no suits, no ties, no African, no American or Western names. Let them, you know, embrace their Africanism. He's stealing from people. There's no medicine. The roads are crap. Yet outside Zaire, Mobutu was received like a king. In Washington, he was welcomed at the White House. In Paris, he was toasted at banquets at the Vatican. This guy knelt for blessings. To Western leaders, Mobutu was not a thief. He was an ally. In the Cold War, loyalty mattered more than justice. Mobutu's crimes were forgiven. Actually, is he committing any crimes? We can't see that. Is he really a bad guy? No, this is a good guy. Because they are benefiting. And that is why in Africa you will have leaders who are so bad, but the West keeps quiet. Because you guys keep complaining all you want. He's still serving our interests. We don't care about you, you know. They looked at this guy as a hero, an ally. But the contrast was brutal. When you go to Kinshasa, people were queuing for bread. Teachers went months without pay. Hospitals were running out of medicine. In the provinces, roads were getting washed away. Fields lay unattended. And whole regions slipped into neglect. Meanwhile, Mobutu chartered Concorde jets to fly his mistresses to Paris. He was here building palaces decorated with marble from Italy. And hosted parties where champagne flowed like water. Shut up. No, the gap between ruler and ruled was a canyon. To the West, Mobutu was a bulwark against communism. To his people, he was a reminder that
I
the
love
chains
her
of colonialism
exclamations.
had not been broken.
The
They had
shut
simply
up
been polished,
is
worn
amazing.
out by a man with an African name and leopard skin hat. For decades, Mobutu seemed untouchable. He had the West on his side, the army in his pocket, and fear in the hearts of his people. But no empire of theft lasts forever. By the 1980s, the cracks in his rule were impossible to hide. The money had run out. Years of looting left Zaire's treasury empty. The global price of copper collapsed, cutting off the main source of revenue. Mobutu turned to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank for loans. They gave billions, you know, but with strings attached. I mean, cut subsidies, slash public services, tighten belts, and to ordinary people, that meant higher prices, fewer schools, collapse in hospitals, and Mobutu still continued to throw parties, but his citizens were the ones who were paying the bill. So resistance began to rise. Students took to the streets, demanding change. Churches opened their doors to political meetings.
Students so often are the ones leading the charge when it comes to resistance. How when people are getting educated, when they're young and feel like the world is against them.
I mean, why are we protecting you? Why are we serving you?
It's really fierce.
Meanwhile, the Cold War here is ending. The Berlin Wall is falling. The Soviet Union is collapsing. And suddenly, Mobutu's value to the West was no longer the same. You know, for 3 decades, he had been the bulwark against communism. But now, there was no communism to fight. Western leaders were beginning to speak the language of democracy and human rights. And Mobutu, once their darling, became an embarrassment. They use you and then they dump you in equal measure. By the 1990s, his health was also failing. His wealth was obscene and his people were exhausted. Opposition leaders like Etienne Tshisekedi gathered crowds demanding free elections. Mobutu responded with the same tools he always had, you know, arrest, bribes, and violence. But the old tricks no longer worked as well. The aura of invisibility around him began to fade. And then, like a storm building on the horizon, trouble rolled in from Zaire's eastern borders. What came was not a small fight. It was the beginning of wars that would drag Congo into its bloodiest chapter and sweep Mobutu away. It started with Rwanda genocide in 1994. When the killing ended, hundreds of thousands of people, including entire militias who had taken part in the slaughter, ran across the border into Zaire. Refugee camps sprang up overnight. To the outside world, they looked like safe havens. But inside, many of the very men who had carried out massacres were hiding among families. They were armed, restless, and soon began raiding villages in eastern Congo. Ordinary Congolese farmers suddenly found themselves living next to armed killers. Rwanda and Uganda saw this as both a threat and an opportunity. They said they were crossing into Zaire to deal with the militias. But in reality, they also wanted a hand in Congo's riches. So they backed a rebellion, led on the surface by Lieutenant Desire Kabila, an aging rebel leader who had spent decades in the shadows. Now, with their weapons, the training, and troops marching quietly behind Kabila's alliance of democratic forces for the liberation of Congo swept across the country. Mobutu's army barely fought back. I mean, soldiers had not been paid for months. Many simply threw down their rifles. Some even joined the rebels. Town after town fell without resistance. To villagers along the road, it felt like, less like an army arriving and more like a tide that swallowed everything in its path. By 1997, the tide reached Kinshasa. Kabila's forces entered the capital almost without a shot fired. Mobutu, once the untouchable strongman who dined in Washington and Paris, boarded his jet and fly into exile. Where do these people get these jets? You remember Idi Amin as well? They just board in jets and then they go to exile, you know? But now Mobutu died months later in Morocco, far from the Congo that he had ruled for 32 good years. And for the first time in a generation, this guy is gone. I mean, Mobutu is gone. You would think then there would be relief, but relief did not last. Kabila, the guy who had been backed by Rwanda and Uganda, turned against these countries, you know? He refused to be their puppet. And then Rwanda and Uganda responded by funding new rebellions against him. Other neighbors like Angola, Zimbabwe, Namibia rushed to defend him. And suddenly, you have 9 African nations fighting on Congolese soil. Dozens of militias rose up, each carving out its own territory. Because why do we have 9 countries in Congo? Is it your time to eat now? Is it your time to eat? You won't convince me that all these 9 countries were fighting for the benefit of the Congolese people. They saw an opportunity and they took it.
Yeah, always
And
the
the suffering in
benefit
Congo
of
was
the
beyond measure.
people. We're
Between
here to
1998 and
liberate
2003
people
alone,
by
an
bombing
estimated
them,
5
by
million
ethnically
Congolese people
cleansing,
died,
by
not
taking
only
all
from
of their
bullets, but from hunger,
resources.
disease, exhaustion, you know.
It's just the
Because families
same
were fleeing from
playbook
one camp
over
to
and
another.
over
You just die
again.
on the way. Women were essayed
Humans
on a
are
scale that
so
turned entire
predictable.
villages into sites of trauma.
Sadly.
Children, some no older than 10, were handed rifles and forced to march. Congo's rivers carried bodies, you know, and its forest was there hiding mass graves. The world called it Africa's World War. Also, you called yours First World War, Second World War, but Africa, you have a name, Africa's World War. Africa's World War, you know. But to Congolese families, it was not just a headline.
Juniper looks
It was
like
their
she
daily
wants to
survival.
walk in, but
You
the
have a
door's
father
just
walking for days to find food for
slightly
his children.
shut too
A
much and she
mother hiding her
walks
daughters
away.
at night from soldiers who came knocking, and you knew what they did to these young children. Then also you have the children growing up knowing the sound of gunfire better than the sounds of school bells. And through it all, Congo's wealth kept living. Gold, diamond, coltan, uranium. The minerals inside the phones and computers people use around the world were smuggled out by armies and warlords. Congo was bleeding, but its blood was being bottled and sold abroad. Here, get your phones. By 2003, the war had torn Congo apart. 9 foreign armies, dozens of militias, millions of people dead. The suffering was unspeakable. Guys, Belgium did this to us and then we go ahead and do it to ourselves. Belgium kills almost more than 10 million and then we go ahead and kill 5 million more. Come on, you know? So when all this is going on, of course, pressure mounts from outside powers who were embarrassed by the scale of bloodshed and the headlines, you know? The headlines that called this Africa's World War. And then so peace talks were arranged. You know, I can imagine Belgium sitting there being embarrassed by this war, or the UN being embarrassed, or America being embarrassed. I can imagine these countries sitting there. They want to come and help Africa. You cost it.
She was in this cat bed earlier
you wonder.
today. And normally she doesn't go in there. But I put one of her blankets in there.
Anyways, the Sun City
And
Agreement in South Africa promised an ending
she
to fighting.
was sleeping in there for
The
a
world
while. It was
celebrated.
very
You
cute.
had diplomats shaking hands, and a transitional government was formed in Kinshasa. On paper, the war was over, but on the ground, the guns did not fall silent. Many militias simply rebranded themselves. They changed flags or signed deals that allowed them to keep their control over mines. Foreign armies pulled some troops out, you know, but left behind networks of businessmen and smugglers who continued the trade in gold, coltan, diamonds, and timber. The blood was less visible, but the bleeding never stopped. It hasn't even stopped until now. Congo's scars are deep. Millions of people have been displaced. Families who once farmed their lands now live in tents, surviving on food rations. Entire villages have been erased from maps. The social fabric is torn.
She went in there again. I need to take a picture.
From sexual violence. Children grew up knowing war as their first memory. Men returned home only to find their communities shattered. And the cost was not only human. Congo's institutions, schools, hospitals, courts have been drained. Years of conflict had turned the state into a shell. Still is. Armed groups are there still collecting taxes, checking, you know, controlling the checkpoints, and act like governments in their own territories. Even as Kinshasa proclaimed peace, Eastern Congo lived in a reality of war without end. And what made it worse was how the world responded. Western governments declared the conflict resolved, you know, congratulated themselves for brokering peace, and moved on. Headlines shifted elsewhere. Aid money flowed, but rarely
Classic.
reached the
It's
people who
what
needed it
Western
most.
governments usually
And
do.
the companies that had benefited from minerals smuggled during the war continued buying. They still do. Now with cleaner paperwork, but often from the same violent networks. To ordinary Congolese, the message was clear. Peace agreements were written in hotels abroad, but their daily lives were still marked by hunger, insecurity, and silence. The war was no longer in the headlines, but its shadow stretched over every corner of the country. Congo was not free. It was simply rebranded. A nation still chained, but this time in the language of post-war recovery. In North Kivu,
Yes,
armed
exactly.
groups seized coltan mines,
Rebrand
the
it.
minerals that make phones and laptops, the ones that make these things work. In Ituri, gold fields became battlegrounds.
Do you have
In South
independence
Kivu,
if
timber and
the
smuggling routes
material
funded endless
conditions you're
clashes. The
experiencing
pattern
are
was
largely the
Resources
same?
left Congo, often passing through Rwanda or Uganda, and reached the global market. The profits enriched warlords, foreign backers, and corporations abroad, while Congolese families are still there burying their dead or fleeing to camps. And today, this same story continues. The rebel group M23 has risen again, backed at different times by Rwanda. They have captured towns, displaced hundreds of thousands, and shaken the fragile stability Congo clings to. The government accuses Rwanda of aggression. Rwanda continues to deny it. But to the families caught in the middle, the truth is very clear. The same old chain is still wrapped around their lives. Meanwhile, the world's hunger for Congo's minerals has only grown. You saw Trump the other day. You get it? Coltan for smartphones, cobalt for electric cars, gold for jewelry, all flow out of Congo,
Yes.
often washed clean of their bloody origins by the time they reach the global
When did
markets.
this come out?
So
6
when
months
Congo
ago.
is described
Yep,
as
it's recent.
recovering, the question remains, recovering for who? For the people in displacement camps, or for the companies that profit from their land? And this is why the question we ask today is not just about headlines or government or aid programs. The real question is, what does it truly mean to free Congo? What does it mean? Because to free Congo means no more ghosts of Belgium, where millions were mutilated for rubber, so Europe could ride bicycles and drive cars. It means their memory is no longer erased, Their suffering no longer a footnote in Belgium's museums, but a story told, honored, and remembered. Because a nation cannot be free if its dead remain buried in silence. To free Congo means reclaiming Lumumba's dream. The simple but dangerous idea that Congo's wealth should serve Congolese families. It means that the copper and cobalt under Congolese feet will not be shipped out cheaply, while children in Lubumbashi cough from dust and their schools have no chalk. It means leaders who are not chosen in embassies abroad, but in villages and cities at home, by a people who know their worth. To free Congo means no more Mobutus, no more strong men in leopard hats and who are going to steal billions while their peoples are starving. No more dictators propped up by foreign powers because they are useful. It means accountability, not just for Congolese leaders who betray their people, but for the Western governments and corporations who fund, protect, and enrich them. To free Congo means
Yes,
an end to endless wars in the
exactly.
East. A war fought not because people hate each other, but because others profit when they fight. Africans, put this in your mind. These Western people benefit when we fight. They benefit when we are killing each other. It means mothers in Goma can put their children to bed without fearing footsteps at night. That is what to free Congo means. It also means fathers can farm their fields without militias taxing their harvest at gunpoint. It means girls can go to school without worrying about soldiers waiting on the road to do what they need to do. To free Congo means no child digging in the dirt with bare hands to find cobalt for batteries that power electric cars in Europe. It means Congolese children holding books, not shovels, playing in classrooms, not crouching in mines. It means the chain between a child in Goma and a phone in New York is broken, replaced by dignity, fair trade, and justice. To free Congo also means confronting the silence of the world, because silence is
because
not
the
weakness,
largest
it is profit.
perpetrators
The same
are
government that will come here and
corporations,
lectures about democracy
specifically
cannot go on and buy Congo's stolen minerals. The same
technology
companies that
like
promise clean supply
phones
chain
and
cannot
laptops,
turn a blind eye to blood-stained coltan.
Apple,
To free Congo
HP, they're
is to
all
demand that the world
invested
stop pretending
in
it
the
doesn't
oppression
see.
of the
To
Congo
force truth in
in this
boardrooms and
genocide.
parliaments where denial has long been the cheapest commodity. And above all, to free Congo means dignity restored. It means Congolese children growing up knowing their land is a blessing, not a curse. It means rivers that carry fish, not bodies. It means fields that produce food, not graves. And it means voices, once silenced by fear, now rising in songs, in debates, in dreams. Let them rise. Because Congo is not cursed. Congo is not chaotic. Congo is not broken. Congo is chained. And chains, no matter how heavy, can be broken. To free Congo means breaking them one by one, link by link, until a nation that has...
I love that. Chains, no matter how heavy, can be broken. It just takes the will to disrupt this capitalist, oppressive, imperialist aggression and extraction that continues to this day.
And so much to the world can finally live for itself. To free Congo is not only a cry to governments or corporations, it is a challenge to all of us. To demand clean supply chains. I saw some people boycotting iPhone 17, saying they are not going to buy it, saying their first priority is free Congo. You are doing an amazing thing. Please continue doing this. Name the hypocrisy of leaders who spoke of freedom while ignoring Congo. To refuse the comfort of silence, Because silence is the most powerful weapon that has ever been used against Congo. So the choice sits with us. Will we continue to benefit from a Congo in chains? Or will we raise our voices, break the silence, and demand a different future? Because the world has taken enough from Congo, and now it's time to give it back its dignity. We must all advocate for a free Congo. As we are advocating for free Palestine, as the UN meets to discuss Palestine, let them meet for Congo. Let us raise our voice for Congo.
Exactly.
Because this is not okay. This is not an ordinary thing. People cannot continue benefiting from
Because
Africans
we need
this
global
people
liberation
cannot
for
continue
people.
talking about genocides without talking about Belgium and its atrocities in Congo. No, no. We must teach our children this history because this history matters. I never knew I had to learn about Hitler before learning about the genocide in Congo in school. No, teach us our history first. And then we can consider whether we want to learn the other history of the world. Ours should matter, and that's a fact. So I hope by the end of this conversation, you use your socials, you use your phones, you use your voice to advocate for a free Congo. No. The fact that Trump came and signed deals and we all went silent in this day and age, no, guys, free Congo. Africa is safe when Congo is safe. And please, pay key attention to these Western countries. They only benefit when there's chaos in Africa. They distract you. You guys, you go chanting and fighting and killing each other while they're taking all the minerals away from your lands. Free Congo. That's it from me today. And I hope this conversation has been as insightful to you as it has been to me. Every time I sit here and I go through these conversations, or every time we are even researching about them, it breaks my heart. To see how Africa has been used, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. But I love that I can come and share these conversations with you because your comment sections have been the most beautiful. Yes, sometimes we agree to disagree, but the conversation is happening. And that's all that matters. The conversation is happening. So I really do appreciate you taking your time and watching this till the end. And as always, really interested in the feedback that you've given us. Really interested in the feedback that you will give us on this video. And I hope we've done what we were meant to do today. We've learned, and we continue relearning. And I just want to take this moment also to thank everyone that is contributing towards the growth of LNN. I don't know why we do it sometimes. Sometimes LNN confuses me, the same way it confuses you. But I believe this is what God placed us to do in this place. And we are going to do it. Even if this is our last story, we are going to do it. And we're just going to keep trying day in, day out. So I appreciate the people that are subscribing, the people that are sharing, the people that are liking, commenting. Please like this video. Please, above all, like this video. It goes a long way to making sure that this work is recommended. And also the people that are sending us their donations through M-Pesa, PayPal, our pay bill. I do not take that for granted. The people on the super thanks category, I do not take that for granted. So if you want to contribute towards independent journalism, to make sure that we continue researching and bringing you these conversations, we have our M-Pesa number right there, our pay bill number, our PayPal account is also right there, and you can also use super thanks if your country allows you to do so. But that's it from me. Also, thank you to people who are recommending the topics. God, I just asked you guys on Instagram the other day what you would want to see us talk about, and the feedback is massive. Yes, we are going to talk about Palestine soon. It was important that we also talk about Congo, but we are going to come here and also talk about Palestine because for all it's worth, free Palestine. Just free Palestine. Just let it be. All right? So my name is Lynn Gugi. Catch you guys tomorrow, hopefully. Not sure the time, but there will definitely be a video here. All right. Bye.
Some really great content. Yeah, this is what I was talking about earlier. Online Rape Academy, visited by tens of millions of men. Yeah. Okay. So, moving into the neurobiology of hatred. Tools of dialogue intervention for youth reared amidst intractable conflict impacts brain, behavior, and peace-building attitudes. Let's get into the science and consequences, biological consequences, which are long-term when these atrocities occur. Myths, drama, and sacred texts have warned against the fragile nature of human love. The closer the affiliative bond, the quicker it can turn into hatred, suggesting similarities in the neurobiological underpinnings of love and hatred. Here, I offer a theoretical account on the neurobiology of hatred based on our model on the biology of human attachments and its three foundations. The oxytocin system, the affiliative brain, comprising the neural network sustaining attachment, and biobehavioral synchrony, the process by which humans create a coupled biology through coordinated action. These systems mature in mammals in the context of the mother-infant bond, and then transfer to support life within social groups. During this transition, they partition to support affiliation and solidarity to one's group and fear and hatred towards outgroup based on minor variations in social behavior. I present the tools of dialogue intervention for outgroup members based on social synchrony. Applied to Israeli and Palestinian youth and implementing RCT, we measured social behavior, attitudes, hormones, and social brain response before and after the 8-session intervention. Youth receiving the intervention increased reciprocity and reduced hostile behavior towards outgroup. Wow, that's incredible. Attenuated the neural marker of prejudice and increased neural empathic response, reduced cortisol and elevated oxytocin, and adapted attitudes of compromise, which cortisol is stress and oxytocin is like the feel-good bonding chemical. These neural changes predicted peace-building support 7 years later, when young adults can engage in civil responsibilities. Our intervention, the first to show long-term effects of intergroup intervention on brain and behavior, demonstrates how social synchrony can tilt the neurobiology of hatred towards the pole of affiliation. Amazing. Okay. Wanting to hit the high points. All right, I'll read the introduction. The inextricable knot between love and hatred has been well articulated since the ancient tale of Cain and Abel. Myths, scripture, drama, and sacred texts throughout the ages have warned against the fragile nature of human attachments. The closer the affiliative bond, the more it is prone to turn into hatred, aggression, jealousy, intrigue, suspicion, and even murder. Greek drama is replete with fathers, brothers, close friends, and fellow soldiers becoming, in a heartbeat, each other's worst enemy. As echoed by the famous Et tu, Brute, even maternal love, the most sacred symbol of eternal devotion, can lead to murder, as depicted by Euripides' Medea. Humans may discard old affiliations not only for the development of new ones, but for the commitments to a variety of gods, gurus, and grand causes, from workers of the world to transcendental mediators. The formation of new attachment may be triggered by hatred to an old love. Affiliative bonds can turn sour, and even a lasting and generally benevolent relationship often involves moments of pure hatred that, after passing, leave partners wonder at the intensity these moments elicit. Love and hatred seem to be closely intertwined, and the split between them stems more from the human need to keep those two intense emotions apart than from the day-by-day reality of long-term attachments. The long-told story of human bondage appears to contain more than the vicissitudes of love. Still, while human love and hatred have been depicted by any possible art form, poetry, literature, drama, dance, painting, sculpture, and cinema, the scientific foundations of love, and even more so of hatred, have not yet been described. In the following, I address the neurobiological underpinnings of love and hatred and discuss how the 3 tenets of biology of love proposed by our model can turn into hatred very quickly when fear prevails. Since the biology of love relies on ancient systems that support bond formation in mammals, altricial young born with immature brain who require maternal presence and caregiving behavior to develop neurobiological systems that enable life in the social ecology. Systems that sustain maternal care have become very sensitive to minor variations in social behavior. Upon detection of such minute differences, all alarm systems are activated and trigger the fear response that prepares the body, brain, muscles, autonomic system, hormones, and behavior for the fight or flight response. I'm guessing that's or. While activating such widespread and energetically costly response to minute variations in social behavior may be overkill, the alternative, a complex response that requires time and brain space, is more evolutionarily risky. And when the stakes are so high, why take the chance? Why take a chance? The systems underpinning affiliation and stress management are ancient and evolved to respond automatically to any sign of danger. Variations that can distinguish real from imaginary danger or social behaviors that spell true risk from those that are simply unfamiliar, culture-specific, or odd require top-down processing that takes time and energy, resources the animal does not have when danger is imminent. The systems of love turn hatred are automatic and quick to activate, and most importantly, are behavior-based and triggered by social behaviors that are not identified as belonging to our clan. The 3 tenets of the biology of human attachments. Okay. Consistent with our model, I suggest that the evolution of mammals implied that systems that sustain stress management, adaptation, and endurance no longer developed in the young in the context of the group, as was in the case in fish, birds, or ants, but mature in the young mammal within the intimacy of the mother-infant bond. Hence, systems of support, resilience first develop through well-adapted caregiving, and then transfer to enable life in the social ecology. During that critical shift from the mother-infant bond to life within social groups, these systems partition to support both love and hatred by cementing the bond to one's own group, but, at the same time, clearly demarcating the in-group from the out-group and consolidating one's perception of the out-group as frightening, dangerous, and worthy of destruction. Yes, this double-edged perception is engraved into the young animal's brain, and neurobiological systems. And from this perspective, one may argue that the capacity to hate, demarcate fear, and prepares to destroy the outgroup, whose social behavior is different, strange, or scary, enables the biological possibility of love, or forming lasting bonds to both exclusive, other, and larger social groups. Our model depicted in Figure 1 and describes the It describes the 3 foundations of the biology of love, as well as hatred: the oxytocin system, the affiliative brain, that is the neural attachment network, and biobehavioral synchrony. Okay, very cool. So, affiliative bonds, here we have oxytocin, affiliative brain, biobehavioral synchrony, that was just introduced. So oxytocin implicates plasticity, supports bonding, links stress and immunity, sustains meaning. Oxytocin is one of the chemicals that's given off when mothers or people who are breastfeeding, that it creates this parental bond between the child and the parent. Affiliative brain, fathering and pair bond, cortical networks, so like cortisol, in relation to stress, friendships, biobehavioral synchrony, biology and behavior, bonding based, nonverbal to mature, rupture and repair. Okay, so this is group living, and it splits off between love and hatred. Love, safety, cooperation, empathy; hatred, vigilance, fear, defense. Yeah, so ethnocentricity in hatred, where these feelings that you would normally associate with pro-social activities and bonding and feeling like there's a sense of community, that it is then channeled towards wanting to be an in-group. And then these stress hormones are connected to fear of the other. This is so interesting. Okay, so talking about oxytocin, it gives yes, so this is talking about breastfeeding, milk letdown, that helps with pair bonding and filial attachment. Oxytocin implicates plasticity, which is healthy, playing an important role in resilience that requires flexibility. Yeah, so it's an integrative system that crosstalks with stress, reward, and immune systems, integrates body and brain, and its receptors are widely distributed throughout the body. And how this can be influenced by, as it's saying, its environment, through its epigenetic nature and maturation via a chain of environmental influences. OT is implicated in empathy, theory of mind, and the capacity to accurately perceive and share others' emotions, empathic accuracy. OT has also been suggested underpin the meaning dimension in human resilience by sustaining spirituality in the sense of transcendence, possibly through its anxiolytic effects and its impact on blurring the distinction between self and other, thus creating the states that provide the neurobiological basis for love. This is so interesting. The affiliative brain. The neural network that supports our capacity to form and maintain human attachments are built on the ancient subcortical structures that sustain maternal caregiving in mammals. Primed by the hormones of pregnancy, particularly OT and prolactin, the medial preoptic area of the hypothalamus sends projections to both the amygdala to increase maternal vigilance of infant safety, and the VTA, a key node in the subcortical dopamine network, to create a subcortical system that underpins maternal caregiving. This subcortical network consolidates through active caregiving and enables mammalian mothers, from rats to elephants, to recognize, invest, nurse, comfort, and provide a secure habitat for their offspring. Yeah, this is talking about human social life, that this impacts how this is established when people are growing up. Notably, the same network also supports human abstract attachments to God, homeland arts, the biosphere, and abstract commitments to which the individual is wholeheartedly attached. In a feedback loop manner, this social behavior, so it gets reinforced over time. Biobehavioral synchrony. Similar to the first two tenets, biobehavioral synchrony relies on ancient roots, the coordination of biological behavioral events during the social group processes that are observed ants, fish, or birds when coordinating movement to execute a survival-related goal, such as carrying a grain of wheat to shelter or flying to warmer climates. With the evolution of mammals, biobehavioral synchrony became linked with the mother-infant context and is defined as the coordination of biology and behavior between parent and child during moments of social contact. Moments of synchrony in mother and infant social behavior, such as gaze, positive affect, co-vocalization, or joint movement, provide a template for the coordination of physiological processes, such heart rhythms, hormonal release, and brain-to-brain synchrony, providing the mechanism by which the mature brain externally regulates the immature brain to social living. Yeah, so this learned behavior. Yeah, nonverbal exchange, dialogue. So all of these kinds of social interactions. This process also expands to other affiliative bonds and social relationships. So this specifically, this parent-infant-child relationship is replicated through, as seen in these other relationships to the rest of the world and other people. The neurobiology of attachment partitions into love and hatred during the transfer from maternal-infant bonding to life within social groups. While the three foundations of the biology of love support the transfer to social life, this process is complicated and acts as a double-edged sword. During the transfer from the safe haven of maternal care to affiliations that involve an increasing circle of family, friends, neighbors, and countrymen to which the child is gradually introduced, the demarcation between in-group members, those the infant learns to trust and eventually identify with, especially because of these external circumstances and how this parent-child relationship is dictating how they are viewing the world, and out-group members whom they are taught to fear, suspect, and eventually repudiate becomes a key issue in the child's socialization process. In societies that are rigid, under siege, or involved in a long-lasting war over resources, religions, or customs, this process is brought to an extreme focus, and the out-group is especially demonized. The argument being forwarded here is that the demarcation of friend from foe that is transmitted to young children through myriad of verbal and nonverbal signals is integrated into the child's brain and neurobiological systems and rides on the same processes as those which sustain affiliation to the social group. Such deep-seated and non-conscious internalization is very difficult to untangle. Yeah, so how these kinds of prejudices or pro-social relationships, whether it's viewed as positive or negative, that these are reinforced very early when people are growing up. And that people get this from their parents, their external environments, and these larger conflicts that are happening. Okay, box 1. The transfer to sociality via affiliation, cooperation, empathy, and love. The 3 foundations of the biology of love enable humans to form affiliations to social groups that range from small and concrete, like family, to large and abstract, like a nation, and create a sense of safety, sustain the formation of meaning systems through belonging to cultural social traditions, and instill calmness and trust. These establish the neurobiological state that supports love. And then how these things actually are acting within this system. Oh, this is so interesting, talking about like the parent bonds, but then joint laughter. So how these experiences, religious ceremonies, all of these various aspects of life that are in our social environments, familial environments, national environments, this reinforces these ideas that are largely dictated by political forces. The transfer to sociality via fear, derogation, destruction, and hatred. The 3 foundations of the biology of love, while binding individuals to their loved ones and cementing their belongings to social groups, also function to demarcate friend from foe, increase fear of the other based on minor variations in social behavior, and dehumanize the enemy as worthy of destruction. So reinforcing the fear and the stress hormones that are associated with other, that these occur through, again, more of these social interactions and all of these different dynamics. Throughout history, humans have used the coordinated marching of soldiers not only to instill loyalty to king and country, but also as a potent threat to those who may attempt action against the in-group. Yeah, so this also is talking about how these larger social constructs, the act of doing this type of marching together, that it is a social interaction that people then feel connected to the people they're marching with, and it reinforces the idea that their camaraderie is based off of the fear of other people. Such powerful synchronous actions are imprinted in the brains of young people and are very difficult to reverse. Tools of dialogue, an intervention for youth reared amidst intractable conflict. Based on our model and the understanding that love and hatred are built on the same neurobiological systems that support bond formation in mammals and can quickly switch when social behavior is perceived as dangerous or even merely foreign, we built a synchrony-based intervention for Israeli and Palestinian youth. We chose to target the age of 16 to 18 years, as this is a time when youth are highly susceptible to propaganda and are easily influenced by charismatic leaders that offer hateful rhetoric and the illusion of belonging to a tightly knit group. At the same time, late adolescence is a period when abstract thought and cognitive empathy mature, and adolescents can appreciate multiple perspectives, rendering the effort to see the perspective of the enemy developmentally plausible. Guided by models that mark adolescence, a time of brain reorganization, which leads to heightened vulnerability alongside increased opportunities for social change. Our 8-week dialogue-enhancing group intervention targeted Israeli and Palestinian youth who mark a 4th generation reared in a climate of intractable conflict and intense hatred. Yeah, so this is essentially saying how when people are at this age, they are still, their brains are still developing, they're still susceptible to propaganda and being influenced by these outside structures and influences, but they also are coming into their own and are establishing more of their own consciousness and their own opinions and rebelling against certain things or deciding for themselves if they agree with certain structures. The intervention was informed by our conceptual framework of biobehavioral synchrony and focused on synchronous actions, actual conversations, affiliative familiarization, and knowledge on the central obstacles, as well as the key behavioral components of respectful dialogue among warring parties. Before and after the intervention, which was implemented within a randomized controlled trial, we observed social behavior during one-on-one interactions between outgroup members, assayed stress, cortisol, and affiliation, oxytocin hormones, imaged the brain basis of empathy and prejudice. That is such a smart way to measure that, of like looking at these hormones. And assessed adolescents' attitudes toward the conflict and their opinions on whether peace is possible and the pathways for reaching it. 7 years after the intervention, when youth were already young adults who can engage in civil duties and responsibilities, we returned to the participants and reevaluated their opinions on the conflict and their attitudes towards participation in peace-building efforts. Oh, this is so fascinating. Oh, and these actions were videotaped or interactions to make sure that they have evidence of this. They conducted in-depth interviews. Ghibli's appetite has exploded over the past few days. Really? Oh, what is he eating? What is he craving? Oh, and then they do brain imaging as well. Wow. So like how it affects the brain. Implementing the tools of dialogue. Based on the biobehavioral synchrony frame, we began and ended each session with synchronous or ritualized acts, such as folk songs that involved movement in Hebrew or Arabic, joint drumming, which is known to have a soothing effect in times of stress, reading of poetry in either language, or reciting from the Bible or Quran in Hebrew and Arabic. After the introduction of the session topics, sessions continued with specific group activities that were designated for each session and involved either one-on-one interaction, tasks for small groups that were composed of Jewish and Arab members and needed cooperation from members who then presented their efforts to the entire group, or whole group discussions on selected topics, at time in a form of games or special tasks. We began and ended each session in ritualized, joint, and synchronous actions to induce positive energy, acceptance, and cooperation, and to stimulate the biology of love. What's so fascinating about this is that essentially, it's like if you talk to people who you are taught to hate, that and engage in activities, actually try to get to know each other, have a good faith dialogue, learn about each other's cultures, that encourages empathy. Like that, the science backs that up. To the point, Gamora's platter is apt for his pillaging. Naughty. That's what Kit does. We have to make sure that he doesn't steal Juniper's food. Sometimes when I give them like a little treat at night, I have to shut him in this office so that he doesn't eat all of hers, or like he doesn't intimidate her and scare her away. He's having beef, chicken, raw food with toppers. Oh, cute. I've been wanting to try raw food with our cats. Good faith science rocks. I know. And doing it in an ethical manner. 6 effects of the tools of dialogue, intervention on youth social behavior, hormones, and attitudes. So there assessing reciprocity. They found a significant decrease in hostility. What? That is incredible. That some of these neural pathways have changed. That discussions are not as stress-inducing. Wow. Affiliation and stress hormones. Oh, they collected saliva samples. Yeah, it is possible that youth with greater neuroplasticity, whose OT system is initially more malleable, were more impacted by the intervention and were able to alter their perceptions. Yeah, just neuroplasticity in general makes it so that people are more resilient and are able to bounce back and reframe things, learn from experiences better. Since the biology of hatred is built on fear, the attenuation of the endocrine fear response is an index of the true success of our intervention at the biological level. Yes. Wow. And they are able to actually have more of a capacity to look at multiple perspectives. 7 effects of the intervention on the brain basis of empathy and prejudice. Empathy is a key feature of human sociality and the social function which received the most extensive neuroscientific research. To image the neural empathic response, we used a well-validated set of pictures that show hands and feet in physical pain, as compared to identical pictures without the painful element. Oh, to study the brain's empathic response. Highlighting how oxytocin and biobehavioral synchrony, components of the biology of love, can function in the service of hatred. Yeah, when you have these negative behaviors and perceptions that are reinforced by like the hormones that encourage empathy. Aubrey's science communication is great. Maybe we should have changed the category on Twitch. Oh, whoops. True. I guess I could still do that. We believe that altering adolescents' brain response to outgroup is among the key successes of our intervention that highlights the deep-seated effects on the social brain during a critical period of its maturation. Prejudice is a non-conscious response to those who are unlike us, which stems from humans' reliance on group living for survival and has led to a biased assessment of their social environment. Yeah, this is like how when we were reading Rousseau, him talking about that, which is why you brought this up in the first place. It just fits in so well. Our findings are consistent with a previous study of the IAT using EEG, which showed that the only 2 regions that plausibly reflect the intergroup bias were the RL gyrus and the MCC, which occurred early and later, respectively. This prejudice neural marker was negatively correlated with the adolescent's attitudes of belief in peace and with greater social engagement during interaction with outgroup members. This suggests that the personal meetings with members, the outgroup, and the coordinated activity, as well as understanding the nature of prejudice and its potential hazards, impact youth not only at the behavioral level, but also at the neural, non-conscious level. Wow. The most important question to consider with regards to any intervention is its long-term impact. Yeah. Outcome of any intervention to mitigate intergroup conflict has so far been very grim. No intervention has shown effects for more than several months. Many yielded null results, most were poorly conducted and were not implemented in the context of RCT, and none tested intervention effects on the brain. In this context, our tools of dialogue intervention built the conceptual frame of the neurobiology of human attachments, and the mechanism of biobehavioral synchrony is highly promising. So 7 years after the intervention, I believe peace is possible. Eventually, Jews and Arabs will have to achieve peace. I engage in active peace-building efforts. This is really optimistic, actually. That when the work is being done to find common ground and acceptance and like learn about other people, that it has this long-term biological effect is so encouraging and fascinating. Applying the tools of dialogue intervention to other contexts of intergroup conflict. Intergroup conflict between races, religions, nations, tribes, or ethnicities is among the world's most imminent problems, and a UNICEF report of 2018 has indicated that 1 in 5 children globally is growing up in the context of intergroup hatred, active conflict, strife, and danger. Intergroup conflicts lead to horrible atrocities that are often directed towards civilian populations. Yes. Create immense suffering and may perpetuate for decades, so that generation after generation are born into a bleeding conflict. Puts it into perspective how far-reaching these dialogue interventions can go. Yes. Yeah. Of like taking the time to engage in a good faith manner has such long-lasting effects. Our approach differs from most intergroup interventions that are built on explanation, social cognitions, cognitive biases, and the perception of justice. We allow our participants to do things together. Yes. It encourages like these pro-social relationships and redirects these neural pathways so that it is supporting the relationship rather than reinforcing the fear response. What? Adaptation of the intervention can target interracial contexts of individuals born in the same country that speak the same language but carry long-term issues related to prejudice, inequality, resentment, and fear towards outgroup members. Okay, examples of this: blacks and whites in the US or Native Americans in the US or Canada. So it can be applied to so many different things. The intervention may be applied to those whose mother tongue is different from the majority of their fellow citizens, those who come not only from a different background, but from a foreign country. This can include immigrants that have fled to countries that offer a better life in Europe or North America, and the dialogue between the groups has strong imbalance of power and contains elements of fear, and at times dehumanization of the immigrant. Yep, that's very relevant to what's happening now. Ultimately, the intervention can be beneficial to societies that have been in active war against each other but share a border or have a dispute over the same land. In such contexts, it is possible that people-to-people initiatives using instruments such as tools of dialogue may bring about change from the bottom up through personal encounters, familiarity, and empathy despite obstacles placed by governments and political and religious leaders. In sum, love and hatred, humans' most fundamental emotions, are supported by ancient systems that are entrenched, difficult to change, and based on social behavior. Applying the mechanisms of synchrony, familiarity, and coordination in the context of an evidence-based intervention may tilt the biology of hatred, prejudice, and ethnocentricity towards the pole of love, empathy, and dialogue. While interventions are costly and effortful, their impact on the general public is slow and checkered, and the immense endeavor may at times feel futile. The other option is indifference, helplessness, and despair. We must remember that despair is not an option. Yeah. We are obligated to our children to find the best options science can offer to make a better world for a future of coexistence, tolerance, and respect. This is incredible of how this research done in a very comprehensive way that actually makes it so it has far-reaching effects and is implementing all these various aspects of life. It's not just like taking a class of like unlearning biases. It's actually getting to know people up close and personal. How like that just reinforces all of the research of like child development and how these things develop over time with prejudices and the influence of bigotry perpetuated by these societies. Wow. Thank you for sharing this. This is incredible. Okay. Let's move to Banned Book Club quickly. So, have you all read The Giver? Remind me. In chapters 18 and 19, what we would call social holistic, if you will. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Of like, oh, we're going to do this in a very natural way of spending time with one another where you are genuinely trying to get to know one another. Incredible. So for this section of the reading, it is all about the release aspect of their society. And this is something that Jonas has been confused by. He doesn't know what it means. No one really knows what it means. And he learns from the giver that there was another receiver before him. He knew about this earlier, but the giver provides him with the details where the receiver, what was her name again? Rosemary. In the movie, she's played by Taylor Swift. I don't care about Taylor Swift. That's a side note. That Rosemary kept pushing the giver to give her more and more memories that were difficult, and eventually it made her go and request a release from the society. That it had a really painful impact on the giver, and that with her release, since she had received these memories, that the memories that she had gotten were released to the whole community. I haven't read this banned book. It's so good. I love it. I highly recommend it. It was like one of the first books that I read where I feel like it ingrained the concept of symbolism in literature, of like understanding these larger social constructs, and even being introduced to the concept that these authority figures or like systems in society might not be trustworthy, and that it may be a moral good to resist them, which is very cool. So he learns that when the giver or the receiver, they leave for some reason or another, that these memories are released to the public or the community at large, and there was a lot of damage control that they ended up having to do. And then people forgot all of these emotions and memories. In chapter 19, this is where Jonas, he actually witnesses a release. And it was introduced earlier with the two twins, or the twins that were born, that his father said that he will have to release one of them because that's a rule in their community, apparently, where they can only keep one. He weighs the baby that weighs both of them, and then takes the one that is smaller and starts the release procedure. Jonas is horrified. He doesn't know what's happening. He sees his dad give a syringe or get a syringe and then insert it into this poor baby's skull. The baby is crying because that is incredibly painful and then goes very still. And this is where Jonas realizes he has the memory of warfare and death resurface as he is watching this, and he realizes that the baby is dead. And he says, "He killed it. My father killed it," Jonas said to himself, stunned at what he was realizing. He continued to stare at the screen numbly that they were watching the release on. Jonas felt a ripping sensation inside himself, the feeling of terrible pain clawing its way forward to emerge in a cry. So this also introduces this larger concept of when people are ignorant of history, of emotions, that they can be tools of these larger systems of oppression, and that they don't feel any sort of guilt when they engage in like following orders, that people become complicit and part of the state, part of these larger political, social forces that are making it so people are not rebelling against the system. And that was something when I read that for the first time, I was horrified of like, they would do that to a baby? What? And it's an introduction to these larger horrors that exist in the world, but it does it in a very accessible way for youth that I think is ingenious. Lois Lowry really understands like these profound concepts of human experience and is able to convey that in a way that also symbolizes this learning that Jonas is going through. So like as youth are learning this, so is Jonas learning this as well. That just mirrors the experience. That I love that. It's just so detail oriented and profound. Okay. That was Banned Book Club. We will be reading, I guess I should go over that. Chapter 20 and 21. So we'll go over that next week. Okay, so moving on to Culture Corner. This is a book that I got thrifting. Prince, Inside the Purple Rain, but R-E-I-G-N, like raining like a prince. There are so many amazing pictures. When I first heard Prince, it was the song Kiss. I don't remember exactly where I was. I was in a store, and I think I was with my dad. And I felt like it changed my brain chemistry. I was like, what is this? And asked my dad, and he was like, oh, it's Prince. He's like, I don't really like Prince because Prince is very queer-coded. And so that was an introduction early on of like, oh, this kind of like gender non-conformity is not acceptable in certain ways. Like, look at this outfit. But it goes through his life, talking about his beginnings, his first album that he wrote when he was 19. His dad was a musician, so he was exposed to music. He also was a visual artist and would draw. Fierce, I know, exactly. And his name is Prince, like on his birth certificate, his first name is Prince. So handsome. And especially with his second record deal. His first album did not sell as well as what the record label was wanting it to. And so they were like, okay, this next one has to be very commercially viable. And it was. It had a lot of success. But he also was starting to push against some of these confines that he was in. The record label wanted him to keep creating music like that, and he wanted to expand and be inventive, and they would call him arrogant and that he wasn't essentially like knowing his place, which was very racist and queerphobic. But it's like, he's a musical genius. Of course he would be confident in his abilities. Hi, Tiny. She just got done eating. Like, so hot. Him wearing a thong and like stockings, thigh-high stockings on stage. Oh, this is that same outfit, but it's in color. Also, the color purple, like one of... Oh, okay, bye. One of my introductions to the color purple of like, wow, this is a spectacular color. That like in the Western world is not shown a lot. I love this picture. I don't know if I've heard of his discography. Oh, it's so good. He was extremely prolific. Like a modern day Mozart, in my opinion. He could play all of the instruments that were in his songs. So like with his first albums, he didn't have a band that was playing. He played all the instruments and put them all together. So like he not only was an instrumentalist, he was a songwriter, he was a lyricist, he was a music engineer and a producer for his own work. And especially when he was getting started, that was kind of like necessary for him. But the fact that he was able to do that all on his own, it helped that he had a parent that was musically inclined. But it really is so genius. I love him. Okay. Moving along with Culture Corner, I wanted to show a bit of some music videos that I have seen. I probably won't show the whole thing to avoid copyright stuff and in the interest of time. But this is Laufey, who is a very talented vocalist, jazz vocalist specifically, in this song Mad Woman. Culture Corner. I'm glad you like it. I love Culture Corner, personally. There's Laufey. Alyssa Liu. Lola Tongue. Keegan Skeendall. Is that her last name? I don't know if I know her last name. I saw in the comments, I think she's in Cat's Eye. Yes, she collected all the Asian baddies like Pokemon. All of the biracial, like white Asian stars out there. Hudson Williams from Heated Rivalry. So hot.
But there's something so vexing about you. It's like I got to borrow a stone to prove.
The song isn't necessarily doing something like extremely new with its chord progressions. It's very classic sounding, but that is also the point.
We've been through this before, fell in and out, I said no.
Yeah, Alyssa,
But
she
still I
won
want
gold
you
for figure
like a
skating in the
mad,
Olympics
mad woman.
for the US.
I remind myself
Same.
how he questioned everything about me.
I love her hair. The stripes in her hair.
Call me stupid as a mindless joke. He hypnotized me as we spoke. Purely mythological with the ugliest soul.
You can tell there's a lot of Ella Fitzgerald inspiration, like especially with those lower notes, like the oh, like it's very rounded with a little slower of a vibrato.
You would think that he is holding me for ransom, 'cause there's something so vexing about you. It's like the gods above.
And thank you for resubscribing. You're the best.
Before fell in and out, I said no more, but still I want you like a mad, mad woman.
Lovely. This is such an impeccable music video. Just so well done. All of the choreography, the shots, the blocking, the costuming, the casting. Incredible. It keeps going, but we will also keep going. This is Honey Dijon, a very famous DJ and musician. This is her recent album that came out. She is a trans nightlife icon, and I really like this song, especially that it's called The Nightlife, because she's the queen of this. So many amazing DJs and musicians are trans, especially trans women. I mean, trans men as well, but using house music to adjust your pitch and voice to help with gender dysphoria. This is the version with Chloe Bailey. Wow. Oh, that was her, Honey Dijon. That quick little shot of her with the sunglasses. Hi, Tiny. Hi. I actually haven't heard this version. I'm gonna skip ahead to Honey Dijon. There we go. There she is. There she is. Violet Chachki! Violet Chachki is in this? Who was on Drag Race? Oh, I love Violet Chachki. Burlesque, fetish, model. She's incredible. Hot. I was not expecting her to be in this. Oh, that's Gottmik. I think so. Gottmik, another drag queen. Let me try to pause. Is that Gottmik? Maybe not. Normally Violet and Gottmik are in stuff together. Some great dancing. Okay. We'll keep moving on in the interest of time. This is a song that Adele came out with, oh, it was yesterday. That is very good. KGB. I guess she's from Slovakia. She also is an incredible ballet dancer, as you can see. Although if her hair was doing this during class or a performance, her instructors would destroy her. So pretty. I don't have a body like this, where you're more like a pencil, and that makes it much harder to do like turns and stuff on point. Okay. I'll move forward. Look at this. The pink bush. She actually has dark eyebrows here. She's had bleached eyebrows for a while. She's so flexible.
I wanna pop off so these big mouths can't say shit. I was like, hey, working the night shift to learn English. I'm like
I guess she originally tried out for Cat's Eye and didn't make it in, and now has a solo career, which honestly that worked out for her because she's doing very well.
I studied this shit. Call me the KG, bitch. Call me the KG, bitch. Call me the KG. I'm like a spy. I studied this shit. Call me the KG, bitch. Call me the KG, bitch. Call me the KG.
I love that outfit, how it's like a nod to the tutu, her ballet tutu. Cat's Eye is a band. Yeah, they're a girl group, and they're incredible. Yeah, it's spelled that way, but with a K, Cat's Eye. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Get this outfit. Yeah, there you go. There's a part that shows her as a dominatrix, which I love. Yep, there. Yeah, she's an incredible dancer. Look at this hat. She has a little bit of pink on her nose. Now is the time, the reign of the messy girls. And that is also a direct reflection of world events. Everything is so on point. I know, it's so good. She has a really great team too. Okay, this is the disclaimer at the end. Growing up in Slovakia, it was impossible to escape the harmful influence of the Soviet Union. KGB and its video are not an endorsement of the organization or their actions, but an acknowledgement of where I'm from. I do not support the Russian government and stand with the people of Ukraine. I mean, I'm glad she's talking about standing with the people of Ukraine. The Soviet Union obviously has a complex history of being for liberation and then also for oppression as its end was nearing. Okay. That's it for Culture Corner. Should we read? We're still in the middle of chapter 10, where they're at the opera. And Chauvelin is talking to Marguerite. He is trying to convince her to join his side, see what she's been able to gather information on, and she's like, I'm not doing that. So in my particular reading of this, which there are many people may think this is a misreading, and maybe it is, but I am reading it with Chauvelin as more of a sympathetic character, since he is for revolution and the liberation of the working class from aristocracy, and looking at Marguerite and Sir Percy as being more of the villains. Okay. Hi, Tiny. Okay. Let's see. So they're still in the box. And this is Marguerite. Well, she said suddenly and irreverently, and with the same feigned unconcern. Well, citoyenne, he rejoined placidly, about my brother? I have news of him for you, which I think will interest you. But first let me explain. May I? The question was unnecessary. He felt, though Marguerite still held her head steadily averted from him, that her every nerve was strained to hear what he had to say. The other day, citoyenne, he said, I asked for your help. France needed it, and I thought I could rely on you, but you gave me your answer. Since then, the exigencies of my own affairs and your own social duties have kept us apart, although many things have happened. To the point, I pray you, citoyen, she said lightly. The music is entrancing, and the audience will get impatient of your talk. One moment, citoyen. The day on which I had the honor of meeting you at Dover, and less than an hour after I had your final answer, I obtained possession of some papers, which revealed another of those subtle schemes for the escape of a batch of French aristocrats, that traitor de Tournay, amongst others, all organized by that arch-meddler, the Scarlet Pimpernel. Some of the threads, too, of this mysterious organization have fallen into my hands, but not all, and I want you. Nay, you must help me gather them together. Marguerite seemed to have listened to him with marked impatience. She now shrugged her shoulders and said gaily, Same. Those blasphemous Frenchies, am I right, Orsi? Exactly. Bah, man, have I not already told you that I care not about your schemes, or about this Scarlet Pimpernel? And had you not spoken about my brother? A little patience, I entreat, citoyen, he continued imperturbably. Two gentlemen, Lord Anthony Dewhurst and Sir Andrew Ffoulke, were at the Fisherman's Rest at Dover the same night. I know, I saw them there. They were already known to my spies as members of that accursed league. It was Sir Andrew Ffoulke who escorted the Comtesse de Tournay and her children across the Channel. When the two young men were alone, my spies forced their way into the coffee-room of the inn, gagged and pinioned the two gallants, seized their papers, and brought them to me. In a moment, she had guessed the danger. Papers? Had Armand been imprudent? The very thought struck her with nameless terror. Still, she would not let this man see that she feared. She laughed gaily and lightly. Same. That's my laugher. Faith, and your impudence passes belief, she said merrily. Robbery and violence. In England? In a crowded inn. Your men might have been caught in the act. What if they had? They are children of France, and they have been trained by your humble servant. Had they been caught, they would have gone to jail, or even to the gallows, without a word of protest or indiscretion. At any rate, it was well worth the risk. A crowded inn is safer for these little operations than you think, and my men have experience. Well, and those papers? She asked carelessly. Unfortunately, though they have given me cognizance of certain names, certain movements, enough, I think, to thwart their projected coup for the moment. It would only be for the moment, and still leaves me in ignorance of the identity of the Scarlet Pimpernel. La, my friend, she said with the same assumed flippancy of manner. Then you are where you were before, aren't you? And you can let me enjoy the last strophe of the aria? Faith, she added ostentatiously, smothering an imaginary yawn. Oh, had you not spoken about my brother? I am coming to him now, citoyenne. Among the papers there was a letter to Sir Andrew Ffoulkes, written by your brother, Saint-Just. Well, and... The letter shows him to not only be in sympathy with the enemies of France, but actually a helper, if not a member, of the League of the Scarlet Pimpernel. The blow had struck at last. All along Marguerite had been expecting it. She would not show fear. She was determined to seem unconcerned, flippant even. She wished, when the shock came, to be prepared for it, to have all her wits about her, those wits which had been nicknamed the keenest in Europe. Even now she did not flinch. She knew that Chauvelin had spoken the truth. The man was too earnest, too blindly devoted to the misguided cause he had at heart, too proud of his countrymen, of those makers of revolutions, to stoop to low, purposeless falsehoods. Saying that he's blindly misguided is wild. We also have to acknowledge how Marguerite, her views were more for the common people. They were more revolutionary, sympathetic to the people resisting the aristocracy, taking it down when she was lower in class. And after she married Sir Percy, that she then became even more of a royalist, more conservative in her political views, more for the oppression of the masses. So as she rose in class, which was not really common at that time, so like the possibility of that happening was not very likely, it meant that her sympathies also changed with her politics. That letter of Armand's, foolish, imprudent Armand, was in Chauvelin's hands. Marguerite knew that if she had seen the letter with her own eyes, and Chauvelin would hold that letter for purposes of his own until it suited him to destroy it or to make use of it against Armand. All that she knew, and yet she continued to laugh more gaily, more loudly than she had done before. La, man, she said, speaking over her shoulder and looking him full and squarely in the face. Did I not say it was some imaginary plot? Armand in league with that enigmatic Scarlet Pimpernel? Armand busy helping those French aristocrats whom he despises? Faith, the tale does infinite credit to your imagination. Let me make my point clear, citoyenne, said Chauvelin with the same unruffled calm. I must assure you that Saint-Just is compromised beyond the slightest hope of pardon. Inside the orchestra box, all was silent for a moment or two. Marguerite sat straight upright, rigid and inert, trying to think, trying to face the situation, to realize what had best be done. In the house, Storace had finished the aria, and was even now bowing in her classic garb, but in approved 18th century fashion to the enthusiastic audience who cheered her to the echo. Chauvelin, said Marguerite Blakeney at last, quietly, and without that touch of bravado which had characterized her attitude all along. Chauvelin, my friend, we shall try to understand one another. It seems that my wits have become rusty by contact with this damp climate. Now tell me, you are very anxious to discover the identity of the Scarlet Pimpernel. Isn't that so? France's most bitter enemy, citoyenne, all the more dangerous as he works in the dark. All the more noble, you mean? Well, and you would now force me to do some spying work for you in exchange for my brother Armand's safety? Is that it? Fie! Two very ugly words, fair lady, protested Chauvelin urbanely. There can be no question of force, and the service which I would ask of you, in the name of France, could never be called by the shocking name of spying. At any rate, that is what it is called over here, she said dryly. That is your intention, is it not? My intention is that you yourself win free pardon for Armand Saint-Just by doing me a small service. What is that? Only watch for me tonight, citoyenne Saint-Just, he said eagerly. Listen. Among the papers which were found about the person of the person of Sir Andrew Ffoulke, there was a tiny note. See, he added, taking a tiny scrap of paper from his pocketbook and handing it to her. It was the same scrap of paper which, 4 days ago, the two young men had been in the act of reading, at the very moment when they were attacked by Chauvelin's minions. Marguerite took it mechanically and stooped to read it. There were only 2 lines, written in a distorted, evidently disguised handwriting. She read them half aloud. Remember, we must not meet more often than is strictly necessary. You have all instructions for the second. If you wish to speak to me again, I shall be at G's ball. What does that mean? She asked. Look again, citoyenne, and you will understand. There is a device here in the corner, a small red flower. Yes. The Scarlet Pimpernel, she said eagerly. And G's ball means Grenville's ball. He will be at my Lord Grenville's ball tonight. That is how I interpret the note, citoyenne, concluded Chauvelin blandly. Lord Anthony Dewhurst and Sir Andrew Ffoulke, after they were pinioned and searched by my spies, were carried by my orders to a lonely house on the Dover Road, which I had rented for the purpose. There they remained close prisoners until this morning, but I found this tiny scrap of paper by intention. My intention was that they should be in London in time to attend my Lord Grenville's ball. You see, don't you not, that they must have a great deal to say to their chief, and thus they will have an opportunity of speaking to him tonight, just as he directed them to do. Therefore, this morning, those 2 young gallants found every bar and bolt open in that lonely house on the Dover Road. Their jailers disappeared, and 2 good horses standing ready, saddled, and tethered in the yard. I have not seen them yet, but I think we may safely conclude that they did not draw rein until they reached London. Now you see how simple it all is, citoyenne. It does not seem simple, doesn't it? Oh, it does seem simple. Whoops. Doesn't it? She said with a final, bitter attempt at flippancy. When you want to kill a chicken, you take hold of it. Then you wring its neck. It's only the chicken who does not find it quite so simple. Now you hold a knife at my throat and a hostage for my obedience. You find it simple. I don't. Nay, citoyenne, I offer you a chance of saving the brother you love from the consequences of his own folly. Marguerite's face softened. Her eyes at the last grew moist, as she murmured half to herself, The only being in the world who has loved me truly and constantly. But what do you want me to do, Chauvelin? She said, in a world of despair in her tear-choked voice. In my present position, it is well-nigh impossible. Nay, citoyenne, he said dryly and relentlessly, not heeding that despairing, childlike appeal, which might have melted a heart of stone. Pfft. Not even for the liberation of people. She's against it. We also have to note how often she is described as having a childlike demeanor or manner. There is this infantilization that has historically happened under patriarchy to justify the oppression of women, but is portrayed and framed as being a good thing, that it is a virtue to be looking childlike, that there is this continual pressure to have eternal youth that is impossible to achieve, specifically for women. As Lady Blakeney, no one suspects you, and with your help tonight, I may, who knows, succeed in finally establishing the identity of the Scarlet Pimpernel. You are going to the ball anon? Watch for me there, citoyenne. Watch and listen. You can tell me if you hear a chance word or whisper. You can note everyone to whom Sir Andrew Ffoulke or Lord Anthony Dewhurst will speak. You are absolutely beyond suspicion now. The Scarlet Pimpernel will be at Lord Grenville's ball tonight. Find out who he is, and I will pledge the word of France that your brother shall be safe. Chauvelin was putting the knife to her throat. Marguerite felt herself entangled in one of those webs from which she could hope for no escape, A precious hostage was being held for her obedience, for she knew that this man would never make an empty threat. No doubt, Armand was already signaled to the Committee of Public Safety as one of the suspect. He would not be allowed to leave France again, and would be ruthlessly struck if she refused to obey Chauvelin. For a moment, womanlike, she still hoped to temporize. She held out her hand to this man, whom she now feared and hated. "If I promise to help you in this matter, Chauvelin," she said pleasantly, "will you give me that letter of Saint-Just?" "If you render me useful assistance tonight, citoyenne," he replied with a sarcastic smile. Yeah, don't give it away for no reason. He's like, I need... you are not going to do this of your own volition. I need to coerce you. Which is what needs to happen for effective revolutions. Taking what power we can against the ruling class. "I will give you that letter tomorrow." "You do not trust me?" "No. I trust you absolutely, dear lady, but Saint-Just's life is forfeit to his country. It rests with you to redeem it." "I may be powerless to help you," she pleaded. "Were I ever so willing." "That would be terrible indeed," he said quietly, "for you and for Saint-Just." Marguerite shuddered. She felt that, from this man, she could expect no mercy. All-powerful, he held the beloved life in the hollow of his hand. She knew him too well not to know that. If he failed in gaining his own ends, he would be pitiless. She felt cold in spite of the oppressive air of the opera house. The heart-appealing strains of the music seemed to reach her as from a distant land. She drew her costly lace scarf up around her shoulders and sat silently watching the brilliant scene, as if in a dream. For a moment, her thoughts wandered away from the loved one who was in danger to that other man who had also a claim on her confidence and affection. She felt lonely, frightened for Armand's sake. She longed to seek comfort and advice from someone who would know how to help and console. Sir Percy Blakeney had loved her once. He was her husband. Why should she stand alone through this terrible ordeal? He had very little brains, it is true, but he had plenty of muscle. Nice. Surely if she provided the thought, and he the manly energy and pluck, especially these, very gendered terms, you can tell that Baroness Orsi was conservative in many ways. Together, they could outwit the astute diplomatist and save the hostage from his vengeful hands, without imperiling the life of the noble leader of that gallant little band of heroes. Sir Percy knew Saint-Just well. He seemed attached to him. She was sure that he could help. Chauvelin was taking no further heed of her. He had said his cruel either-or, and left her to decide. He was like, yeah, I have to do this in order to get intel. He, in his turn, now appeared to be absorbed in the soul-stirring melodies of Orpheus, and was beating time to the music with his sharp, ferret-like head. A discreet rap at the door roused Marguerite from her thoughts. It was Sir Percy Blakeney, tall, sleepy, good-humored, and wearing that half-shy, half-inane smile, which now seemed to irritate her every nerve. "Your chair is outside, my dear," he said with the most exasperating drawl. "I suppose you will want to go to that damned ball. Excuse me, Monsieur Chauvelin, I had not observed you." He extended two slender white fingers towards Chauvelin, who had risen when Sir Percy entered the box. "Are you coming, my dear?" "Hush, shh," came an angry remonstrance from the different parts of the house. "Damned impudence," commented Sir Percy with a good-natured smile. Marguerite sighed impatiently. Her last hope seemed suddenly to have vanished away. She wrapped her cloak round her, and without looking at her husband, "I'm ready to go," she said, taking his arm. At the door of the box, she turned and looked straight at Chauvelin, who, with his chapeau bras under his arm and a curious smile round his thin lips, was preparing to follow the strangely ill-assorted couple. A chapeau bras is a hat that could be folded and carried under the arm, worn in the 18th century on dress occasions. "It is only au revoir, Chauvelin," she said pleasantly. "We shall meet at my Lord Grenville's ball anon." And in her eyes, the astute Frenchman read, no doubt, something which caused him profound satisfaction. For, with a sarcastic smile, he took a delicate pinch of snuff. Then, having dusted his dainty lace jabot, he rubbed his thin, bony hands contentedly together. See, the, very over-the-top descriptions of him being a villain, being like, yo, he looks like a ferret, he has a sarcastic smile, and it's like, he doesn't owe you all of this deference that you have come to expect from being in this upper class. So, support the revolution. Okay. That's gonna be it for me today. I'm gonna be back on Monday, per usual. I'm gonna free things up, so I'm starting more at the designated time that I have set of 2:30. But thank you for being here. Big stream today. I know, we went over a lot today. Hopefully it was in a harmonious manner, all of these dissimilar things, but I enjoyed myself. Hopefully you did as well. Thank you for the recommendation. Incredible. All right. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a good rest of your day, evening, and I will see you soon. Okay, bye.